giving a log frame is not a proposal. So what is it that you need to put into a proposal? So if you notice that in a proposal, there are certain important elements of this proposal that goes into it. The first thing that you need to know is your organization. So you will give a brief about your organization, as in what is the vision, mission, and values of this organization. Who is it that leads the organization in terms of the governance? So when you're looking at governances, who is the executive director or the CEO, or you're looking at the whole trustee bodies in the NGO. Okay. Then you also in that you give in other important elements of your NGO, that is the background, your achievements, your audited statements, your annual reports, and all important documents that sometimes can be added to a proposal in terms of your supplementary information. Okay. Having done that, you would then go on to say, what is it that I need to give about information? We have got the needs in place. Okay, we have the log frame, but then you need to also give some history of the area. As in, suppose if you're working in a particular geography, like say, suppose you're working in Maharashtra, in Raigad, for example. So then you will give the whole details about the particular geography, as in to say, I'll be working in one particular taluka. So you'll be giving up the history, the area, and you will source your information from secondary data. Like for example, you'll use data from the census, okay, and you will put all that information together. Just as I'm going ahead, I just realized maybe, yeah, it's being recorded. Thank you. I just wanted to check that. This for those who will miss the class and would like to see the recording later. Okay, so coming back to this, what I was telling you is that you put the background and history and secondary data into place. Once this is clear, then what will you be actually looking at? You'll be also looking at this secondary data, which will focus on the scope, or will look at who else will form part of your project information. This is your geographical area. Okay, you're going to talk about it. Then you will be talking about who is the target group. Actually, geographical area will come more in this. So it will come more in this part of the history and background. Okay, then you will be looking at the target. So in the target group, you'll be looking at what is who is the group of people you are working for. Say, for example, you're working with farmers, or you're looking at women or children, or you're looking at tribals. With whom will you be working? How will you be networking? With which organizations? Networking as in, will you be also working with government departments, NGOs, other organizations, other stakeholders, like say, for example, the police, the stakeholders, the powerful political parties, or networking with them that can positively influence your project, okay, not negatively influence your project. Okay, having looked at that, then we say, who is the team that I would like to put in place, okay, so that this proposal, this project can run. So you draw out your organogram, and the organogram will then tell you with clearly what is it that you would like to have as part of your team. Like for example, your project coordinators, your various trust areas. Depending upon that, who would be the persons who would be coordinating that with your ground staff in terms of implementation teams, like say social workers, outreach workers, and various other persons. Okay. Uh, Another important element that you can see is the implementation plan. Now you have all these points of the log frame and what exactly you plan to do, but then you need to say how would you go about implementing it. Your implementation will involve a timeline, a monitoring aspect to it, and an evaluation. Okay, this will be then coupled by a sustainability plan. Uh, a sustainability plan is a plan that you put into place wherein you will say, as you work your project, how will you actually concretely work out this project? As in, you will say that what is the various systems you'll put in place so that your project will have a sense of continuity. in finance, in persons, in terms of leadership in the project, in the geographical area, in the geographical, in the project community. Okay, so what is your sustainability plan? Okay, so that will come out once it will come out clearly. Then finally, to achieve all that, you require money, you require finance. So budget becomes the next important thing that you're looking at. For that, we have also looked at towards the end of the class last Sunday on the whole question of budget. So this is how your project will shape up. And having done all that, your summary, which you will attach at the beginning of your project, your executive summary is usually a one-pager. Okay, in that one page, you give a complete, so suppose if you send it to a funding agency, they need a complete summary of what you're going to talk about in one page. So that executive summary serves a very important place in your entire project. So let me, to break the monotony of me speaking, let me ask you a question. How many pages do you say roughly a project proposal ought to be? Like I gave you the example in the earlier classes, a concept note, generally speaking, should not be more than 2 pages. Okay, a concept note. What about a project proposal? According to you, or your experience, if you have written a few, what would be a kind of a project proposal? How many pages it ought to be?
So 4 to 5, like
Yeah.
what we did.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe around 4 to 5 pages. Yes. If you are able to write it briefly, yes, 4 to 5 pages is something readable for a funding agency. But it also depends upon how much are you covering as in areas of, like say, if you're looking at the issues that you're covering. So suppose if it is an integrated project, I'm using certain terms. You know what is an integrated project? An integrated model project that you are going to work on. Take, for example, if you're going to look at a cluster of villages, say you may work in 1 or 2 villages, or you may be working in 10 to 12 villages in a particular taluka. Okay, or you may be working in the entire taluka. So it depends upon your geographical reach. In that reason, your project proposal pages may increase. Okay, so it could be for a modest proposal, yeah, 6 pages should be fine. Say suppose, and another important aspect is your proposal in terms of, is it 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years? And is it phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3? What do I mean by this? See, generally, whenever a funding agency looks at your proposal, they will always have an outline which they will give in their call for proposal. Now, the call for proposal will usually say that this project proposal will cover around, say, maybe just 1 year or 3 years. Now, it all depends upon your relationship with the funding agency, as in your confidence that your funding agency will place in you with regard to a, a longer intervention. So now, say, suppose if it is a proposal that they are looking at a long-term partnership with you. So then they would definitely look at a period of, say, minimum of 3 years. See, general experience of funding agencies is that they don't immediately pull out after a year unless it is a program event or it is a specific, kind of a campaign. Then they would look at a short campaign or a sustained campaign. They would look at 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, depending upon the nature of the project. Okay, so generally that is. I also mentioned one more thing. Is it a phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3 project? Now, what are these different phases? Now, generally they would normally take phases as in the pre project. So like suppose if there's a call for proposals, they will say uh, we will give you an initial fund for, say, 3 months to 6 months to gather your data to do the needs analysis. So what they do is, suppose if they look at interested parties and they are keen on working with you, they'll give you a 6 months project for a brief research. And this project will be something that you will put your project together in terms of the data required for the larger project. So that will be the kind of a pre-phase, or some people would call it even the first phase, or actually first phase would be the actual implementation, but a pre-phase. Okay, then you have the first phase. The first phase would generally run between anything between 1 to 2 years. Okay, because what happens is when you enter into the location, you're building rapport, you are actually addressing a lot of factors. So those things come in, like say it could be a one year project, or it could be 2 years stretching. Then you have another phase. A phase is of consolidation, as in you say, okay, they either offer you 2 years. Before, I'm just telling you, before I've worked with funding agencies, have given straight 6 years in a row. So they break up those 6 years, or if it is a very good funding agency which is looking at sustained impact, then they look at a full 3 phase project. Okay, so depending upon the kind of impact that they're looking, the funding agency is looking also at impacts in the project area. Okay, so that is one possibility. Okay, yeah. So let us look at how we can go about. Am I clear about these things? Okay.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yeah. Now, so when we're looking at these elements of the proposal, uh, now let me take you one step further. Before I will take you one step further. Now, tell me, in this, is there something missing still? Is there? I just realized one point when I was putting it down. To save time, I put everything together, but there's one point still missing. Can you tell me what is the point that is missing? I just realized now one point was still missing.
Sir, exit mechanism,
Yeah.
maybe.
Okay, exit. Yeah. That will come in the sustainability. Since you mentioned it, I'll put it down. Your exit plan. Since you mentioned that, I'll put it down. Your exit plan. Okay. So your exit plan will come in that. There is one more important thing which I think, see, you put on top of the project, you write your executive summary. Okay. Okay. And above the executive summary, you could put in uh, let me put it like this, a uh, letter to the funding agency. So above the executive summary, like something that you would write in an email, but you could also write a formal letter with your letterhead. Okay, the letter to the funding agency. But above, just before the executive summary and the letter to the funding agency, there's one more important point which is missing. Okay, anybody would like to give a shot at that? Okay, I'll just tell you, make it simple and tell you. Okay, so one of the important things that you need to do is to give a face sheet. Let me call it a face sheet. Okay, a face sheet is a very interesting thing. What do you write in a face sheet? It is at a glance all the important information about the organization. What is the important information? As in the title of the project. Okay, you will give in other important information like who will head the project. Like you will say who is the director, okay, and along with the director, who will be the head of the project. You can call him the project head or something that way, the project head or whatever you'd like to call the person. Okay, then you would also give in the face sheet, you will give some other information like you will give all what do you call it, the due diligence information. I'll put it down as due diligence. Okay, you understand the term due diligence? uh, Hello. I think all of you will understand the due diligence because most CSR, I know many of you are working with CSR, so you do a due diligence. Okay, so what is a due diligence? You give information like, is your organization a registered organization? If registered, under what trust, society, or Section 8? Okay, so you will give that information. So you will give certain registration information. Let me put it down. You will give some registration information. Then you will also give in certain information like, what do you call it? Uh, what is the other information that you need to give?
It's like 12A,
Like
ATG,
12A,
ATG, PAN card,
MCA
12,
registration.
yeah, ATG, then
CSR one
yeah,
number.
MCA.
yes, all the other registrations. Okay, I'll just put it down as any other registrations relevant. Okay,
Trust
so
deed.
you would have Yes, yes. Trust deed will come here. So you will put your trust. You won't put a deed. You'll put it in the appendix. But basically, this face sheet will not give a lot of data. It's only one page. In that one page, you will give all this information: title of the project,
The
director.
email ID of the organization,
Ah,
I
yes, yes,
remember
yes,
we
yes.
were.
You are right. You are right. You are right. Yeah, yeah. Um, so uh, I'll just put that down also. That is called contact information. So who will, what contact information that you will give about your organization? Contact information. So don't forget to put these things, because you don't have to means, usually most funding agencies have a kind of a format, but I'm telling you this in case they don't have it. Put a face sheet. It is very good. Okay, it speaks good about the organization. Okay, so that is it. So you got it. So you have your face sheet, then you have, if you want to put it in a sequence, I can just drag it here and show it to you. So you have your face sheet, your executive summary. Okay, with that, then you have the next thing is, if you want, I can even number it and tell you. So if you want, the executive summary comes here, then you have your organization and NGO information. Then after the NGO information, you will give a some kind of some background, okay, of the area. Then you will give the needs analysis, okay. With that, you will then go on to say what is the focus of your project, okay. uh, then later on, you will give the log frame. Either you will give the log frame in the project, or you will attach it as an appendix. Then will come the HR information, like who will be leading your team, as in the organogram, and important, and the implementation, sustainability, and budget. Is this clear? Have I missed out anything? Just tell me. Okay, that's great. I mean, that's really good. So that's nice comment. Now I will take you. Now you were telling me about. Now, when you're looking at the project, this is the elements of the project proposal, but you're also looking at certain things like, for example, what do you do at the beginning of a project? What do you do during the project? And what do you do at the end of the project? Okay. Starting the project, let me ask you a question. When you start the project, right at the start of the project, now say suppose your proposal is accepted by the funding agency. What do you think of a project? Any pointers anybody would like to just share, and then I'll tell you what I have prepared. What do you do at the start of a project? Hello.
So start in the project,
Need
as in, like, for
assessment.
example, as
Yeah. Anyone?
Unda, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Please go. Please start.
no, Priyanka, you can actually like what basically, so we do, like, once we get approval, like, I'm very new in this thing, so I'm just telling you, like, once we get approval, then we prepare a step by step implementation plan, and
Excellent.
then we have like meet implementation, then all as per the budgets, what we start, like, purchasing of thing, finalizing everything, regular, like, this is a practically what we do. And like paperwork you are asking,
Yeah.
so I don't
Yeah.
have that
Okay.
idea, but this is the
Yeah.
step by step implementation. Then
Yeah. Very good. Go ahead. Yeah. So you're saying basically an implementation plan is what you're going to look at. You're going to focus on this part of the proposal. You'll take the proposal first, okay, and you will look at how do you go about implementing it. Okay. Anybody else? Hello.
Yeah. When we had done the proposal, we already submitted the need assessment and baseline. Normally, the
Hmm.
period between the proposal and the execution, there is a gap. So what
Hmm.
we do the baseline all over again.
Okay, very good. Yeah, that's an
Because
important
there
point.
normally, yeah, because normally there's a gap of 3 to 6 months. By the time we propose, we get approval, all that. So
Hmm.
this is what I do. I do the though need assessment is done little superficially, but baseline is done all over again because I run malnutrition project. The status of the children at
Hmm.
that particular time is very important for me because I'm going to track that data.
Okay,
So
very good.
I feel, yeah.
So I think you focused on a very important point, that is conducting a baseline. So when you start a project, the important thing is to focus on saying, let us get our data in place. As in uh, what you rightly said, we need to understand what is the um, data that we need to keep in place.
Got
Okay.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think I'm not sure who spoke. I think, but you also
Kushala.
spoke about, yeah, Kushala spoke about, and Priyanka. So you spoke about implementation plan. Okay, so rightly said, there has to be, you need to look at an implementation plan. Okay, now I put in a few points here which you need to look at. Okay, before the start of a project, when you're looking at the start, when you're looking at the project, you have many important things to look at, and most of the things are like putting in your data in place. Okay, so putting your data in place, you need to do uh, you know a needs assessment, as in I mean, you have already done your needs assessment, so probably you want to clarify that, so you go back and then you collect your assessment, baseline assessment. Okay, your, yeah, so this is before the start of the project. Okay, fine. This is before the start of the project. Okay, so this is before the start of the project. You would actually do all these important points. Okay, you put all the plans in place. You would look at the resources. Okay, this is another important point to look at. You would look at how much money are you getting in from your project, and if there is a shortfall, you would need to also look at certain areas in which you would need to supplement it with funds from other sources. So once you look at that, and once those things are in place with your budget, you'll be then looking at recruiting of staff. Okay, which are the human resources that you would like to put into place. Another thing which you also spoke about, I think it was Priyanka, we spoke about infrastructure. You would need to put in your required things that you need to purchase and get ready for the project. Okay. Uh, it is also important at this time to start engaging with the community. Okay, so since you will be in the pre-phase of the project, you will begin by engaging with the community. That means you will take official permissions, you will try to see how you can build rapport in the community. You will also look at certain, probably training your staff, and also training certain local leaders if required. So suppose if there is a need to train in identified local leaders, you will start by looking at those possibilities. Okay. Um, you will get together and have a training. Now, what is this training that you will have for your staff? You will look at your staff and say, you'll get your staff together and get them familiar with the project proposal and the design, so that if your staff are on you with you on the same level. Very often I see that projects don't succeed because the staff or the entire team is not on the same level of thinking. So you need to understand how you can put this by giving them an entire understanding of the project.
So you're breaking.
So we can't hear.
Suppose on one village. Okay, hello.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
I'm sorry. Yeah, can you hear me? Is it gone off?
Yeah, now we can hear
Now
you.
we
Hello.
can hear. Now we can hear you, sir.
Yeah.
But in
Yeah.
between, the voice was breaking and we were not able to hear you.
Okay. 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 Actually, I am trying to. I've switched to my phone data. So because my Wi-Fi was not clear with all of you, so that's why I switched to the phone data. Okay. So I was talking to you about the things that we need to put into place. With regard to the project at the start. So basically, your focus in the start of the project will be the planning, like it's putting everything into place along with your data. Okay, so all those kinds of things you need to put in place. Okay, now I'll ask you another question: is what do you do?
So again, voice is gone. Sir,
So we can't hear you.
sir, we can't hear. Hi, everyone can hear anything? I can't.
No, even I can't hear.
Okay.
To arrange my rework my. Uh, Even my screen is not visible, no?
Now it is, sir.
No, sir.
Screen is
Okay.
No,
visible to me.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's minimized actually. Okay.
No, no, no. What I'm sharing on the screen is visible to you, like that mind
Yeah,
map.
task before. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
says
I
that
just wanted to
task
know that
before the
that
start of the project.
project. Right, right, right. Okay. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now is it clearer? I mean, I switched back to my network connection. Yeah, I think this should be better. Let's hope.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so once again, I'll share my screen just so that I actually. Okay, I think you should be able to see my screen now. Hello?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
okay. Yeah, so I was talking to you about the points of the task before the start of the project. Okay. Now I shall take you to another part, that is during the project. So what do you do during the project? Okay. Uh, During the project, you will actually take the implementation plan and work out the details of that implementation plan. So you will be looking at constant engagement with the community. Let me put it like this, that you will be looking at engagement. So the highlighting part of before the project would be planning, and during the project period, I would say that engagement and constant monitoring will be part of project implementation. So what would be the task during? So you'd be looking at engaging with the community in terms of rapport building, as you can see. The second important thing is that you will be creating groups, committees, all those kinds of things. So the community engagement will be the highlighting part of the project implementation. Another important aspect along with the project implementation is the actual implementation activities. Every project has specified activities. So you will be looking at those activities that are pertaining to your project and looking at uh, working out those in a concrete manner. So you will be looking at what are the awareness programs, trainings, actual programs or events and advocacy that you will be actually working out in terms of activities. Okay. um, so these kind of things, and probably even activities as in uh, real kind of probably even sometimes infrastructure or whatever things that will be part of the project. Okay. So that is another important aspect along with community engagement is stakeholder engagement. Who are the stakeholders? You remember in the first part you looked at who are the stakeholders that you are looking at, and these stakeholders with whom you will be working with. Now, why I have mentioned it very important is because when you're implementing the project, you need to see are those stakeholders with you, and you need to constantly review that so that that will impact the project implementation. For this, you have a whole monitoring that would need to be put into place. Monitoring is what we're going to look at in today's session today in a detailed way and say what is this monitoring that we need to. The first part is your baseline. Your baseline will be part of your implementation plan. So your baseline figures are already there. Then you will be looking at midline monitoring. Midline as in you will be looking at, say, your project is consisting of 1 year. Let's take a very simple project. If you say a 1 year project, then you will be looking at midline somewhere at the 6 months, or some people even look at quarterly monitoring so that there is a clear way forward at every quarter, because quarter is normally, even when you're looking at CSR, quarter is what you need to show your results. Okay, so you would have a midline monitoring plan, and an end line is understood as evaluation. So we won't be looking at during the project as end line. End line will be at the end of the project. All the same, it requires to be planned. Okay. Constantly, as you are looking at engaging with the community, the important thing that stands out is the challenges faced. Now, these challenges that are faced will be evident in terms of monitoring that is happening during the project. So you will look at what are the challenges that one faces, what are the problems, and how can you resolve those conflicts. With this, you need to say what is the changes that I need to bring into the strategy. Okay. Once this is looked at, you look at the same time as all this is happening, documentation becomes a very important aspect of the project implementation. Documentation as in saying what are the important reports and case studies and success stories what are the models that are emerging from my project? So documentation becomes an important aspect of project implementation, and you need to put these things in order, because later on you cannot wake up at the end of the project and say, oh, I did not know that this had to be done, or this. You will never get case studies at the end if you have not planned for it during your project. Okay. So if you're looking at, you would actually need to handhold certain, like say it is a group that you're looking at, a farmers group, or you're looking at a special group like say SHGs, or you're looking at certain, groups of adolescent girls. So you need to develop those case studies by mentoring, and so in order to show it as a success story at the end of your project. Models is another important thing, is that what is the emerging model from your project, like say if you're working on watershed, or you're working on say clean energy. Okay, so if you're looking at all these things, that what is the model that is emerging from your project? You need to keep this in the form of documentation, like photographs, videos, actual case studies, interviews. So you kind of create all this documentation so that at the end you will have concrete things. Now, as I was telling you, documentation is also understood as reporting. Okay, reporting as in clear in project reporting, like as per the demands of your project, as per the activities of your project. So now this will have to be understood as who reports to whom. So therefore you have a structure in the place. In structure in the sense that if your program coordinators there, your program coordinators report to the the vertical heads or whatever it is. Okay, what is the organogram that you're following? So how does those reports get uh, tabled at various levels in the organization? Like in reporting, you could look at what is the structure of your reporting, as in do you have meetings? Do these meetings have co-group meetings, or management level meetings? Then you have mid-management level meetings, and you have field staff meetings. Okay, so at what is the periodicity of those meetings? At what time do those meetings take place? Okay, so these need to be put into place. You have also the thing of reporting in terms of visibility. So every report needs to get not only put into some kind of a filing system, but also needs to get some visibility in terms of saying that does this get featured in newspapers? See, I'm telling you all this because in project implementation, if you don't keep these matters in mind, later on you will lose out when you're reporting back to your line managers or to your CSR heads, or you're reporting back to say the funding agency. So visibility is very important in terms of media coverage, in terms of goodwill that the organization will carry. Okay. Yeah, so I think and also one more thing which I missed out is when you're implementing activities, what are the strategies that you are using? Because the strategies that you use will then become your model. It is connected to becoming a model and your reporting. So whenever you're looking at your strategy at your activities, also mention what was the strategy used. Like for example, say in watershed. So suppose you're implementing a project in watershed. What was the strategy used in terms of forming farmer groups? Or if you're looking at a livelihood project, what was the strategy used in terms of arriving at a cooperative or arriving at a producer company? So what was the strategy used? So these are important things that you will look at when you're looking at project implementation. Have I missed out something from your experience too, if you think that needs to be done during the project? Yeah. Um, yes. Are you able to think of some things? Yeah. In stakeholder, you could look at, if you want to put some more subcategories to stakeholders, you could look at NGOs, okay, civil society, okay, CSOs, we call them civil society organizations. You could look at government organizations, okay, government stakeholder. Then you could look at as in government, the bureaucratic structure. Like say you're looking at in government, you're looking at dealing with government officers to the whole process, you know. Okay, bureaucrats. So the bureaucrats in the government structure or whatever. So suppose if you have got to get certain permissions and all those kinds of things that would come in. Okay, any other thing you think we are missing out on? Ah, yes, stakeholders as in you could also look at, I forgot to mention since didn't realize, is that you're looking also at the corporates, okay? So you're looking at other corporates uh, in the area. So suppose you want to look at certain other corporates in the area, okay? Anybody else would like to add to whatever is being done here? So strategies, just for your sake, I'm just writing, for example, community mobilization. Okay, community mobilization is a strategy. Can you give me some more strategies that you would like to look at? Say advocacy. Okay, uh, if you are an organization, so you can look at even advocacy as a strategy, or you can look at you know. Uh, you can look at livelihood and
Maybe course correction.
yes, course correction, yeah. um, okay, producer companies, okay, yeah, course correction, that's a good point that you mentioned. I have put course correction in changes in strategies. Okay, so I'll put a point that you mentioned. So suppose if you're looking at changes in strategy, you're looking at after monitoring, you're looking at what is the course correction required. Yeah. So when you do a monitoring on a regular basis, so that way, yeah. Okay, I think maybe we can always add to what is mentioned because we are constantly. Now I'll ask you another thing. What would be the task at the end of the project? Okay, so what would be important to keep in mind when you're looking at the end of the project? So as you're nearing the end of the project or even after the project, you need to look at certain important things, and you'll notice the focus of the end of the project is usually evaluation and documentation. So you will look at everything that we're looking at is or evaluation, documentation, and sustainability. Okay, so these are the three highlighting features at the end of the project. You will look at what is the documentation or reporting or reports that you need to keep in place. What is the kind of evaluation that you're looking at? You know, yes, you are looking at an end-line evaluation. So is that end-line evaluation or assessment, is it going to be internal or is it going to be a third-party external one? You know, so are you looking at external evaluation or are you looking at an internal evaluation? Third party as in not the funding agency, not the organization NGO, but you're looking at an independent person who comes in and does an evaluation or doesn't. You can also look at an impact evaluation, which I've separated from a normal evaluation at the end of a project. An impact evaluation, as you know, is done at the end of a project or a little later. Actually, it doesn't need to be at the end. End is usually an end line, but an impact evaluation would be something like, say, after a year or maybe after 3 years, depending upon the kind of impact that you're looking at being visible. Okay, so say you have done a watershed in an area, so you would need to look at the impact as what has happened with regard to the sustaining measures implemented in the watershed. What has happened to the structures of the watershed? How has the continuity of the watershed been taken up by the community? Okay, structures as in both physical structures and also community structures. Okay, what are the what is the state of the farmer? Yeah, sorry, somebody was saying something. Yeah. Yes, so actually it's very interesting impact evaluation. We'll be doing a little bit of impact evaluation also in today's session. So you see there is another thing that you would be looking at is what is the model that is created? Is there a possibility of expanding the project in terms of replicating the model? Creating models, and I'll just put one more point is replicating models. Okay, so at the end of the project you will also talk about replication of models. Okay. So that is another interesting part that you can look at when you're looking at expansion and of a, yeah. Anybody else? Anybody has any other points to add to this? Okay, so yeah, and the sustainability part of it. Now, when you're looking at sustainability, you're looking at like how will you withdraw from the community? As in, are the leaders of the community prepared? What is the resource generation being done at the community level in terms of is the project requiring financial support from outside, or is it self-generative or generated within the community? What are the plans and mechanisms put into place within the community when you're talking about sustainability? Like, is the SSG capable of functioning without external assistance? Is the livelihood that you have initiated, being carried on by a producer company or by a group of individuals who will take the enterprise ahead? Okay, you have created an enterprise, you have created a social enterprise or a producer company. So is that possibility that who will take it forward? Okay, the NGO should not be running these enterprises. I mean, this is my opinion. It should it should be handed over to the community or to those responsible. You could form a producer company. So those people who are the core committee would then take on the responsibility of running that enterprise. Okay, so that is what you will do at the end of the project or after the project. Yeah. Um, yes. So you will also look at withdrawal. Okay. So when you're looking at sustainability, you're looking at the whole process of withdrawal, as I mentioned. As in, you will look at whether you will withdraw from 100% of involvement. You will progressively withdraw, like say 80% of involvement. Then you will come down to, in the next 6 months, you will come down to say 50% of involvement. And in the second year, you will probably come down to 20% of involvement. So that's the kind of involvement or rather withdrawal that you are going to look at. Okay, so that is the whole question. Now these points actually come in social work. I'm sure you have studied it if you have done your development studies, or if you have done your masters in social work, you would have studied all these points. Okay, but just a revision of some of these points that you already know. But why I'm placing it in this point is because you're looking at concrete tasks before the project, during the project, and after the project. So it is very helpful to look at this process. Okay, any questions now based on what I just shared with you? Okay. Hello.
No, sir.
Yeah, so I think we can go ahead. So just to tell you that we have been going through a process in this entire module of understanding various important points, and we've looked at some important points of project management. We have looked at planning. We have looked at the whole understanding of putting a project together through the various elements of a project in terms of looking at how we can come up with a log frame in the context of your project of your problem tree. Okay, so we looked at log frame, and now in today's class we're going to very concretely look at what is the evaluation, monitoring and evaluation that we need to conduct towards the end of the project, monitoring during the project and evaluation at the end of the project. And what is the important aspects that we need to keep in mind when we're looking at participatory evaluation and when we are preparing for an evaluation? Okay, now these are something very concrete, and I'm sure each one of you will also have experiences to share within your own working. Okay, so today we are. I wanted to know how far have you reached with regard to your assessment delivery. So you have worked on your entire um, project. So I'm just looking at how much have you started working on. Were you able to work on the needs assessment, as in preparing a little tool for that and a log frame, okay, based on the problem tree that you have arrived at? Any responses with regard to that? Any difficulties or challenges faced? So that's the point that I'm highlighting in my slide here. What are the challenges that you have faced? Is there any challenges that you have faced? Yeah, okay. If no challenges faced, then I think I can go ahead. Okay. Uh,
I have not started working on it, so I won't be able to.
okay. Actually, it would be good if you start, like say, which I've written here. If you can first identify your problem that you're looking at, and if you can look at a concrete geography that you're working on, that would be really really helpful. So if you can look at a geography that you are, or a particular issue that you would like to, address, and then you make a problem tree, and then afterwards you can prepare a log frame and a budget for that entire process. Okay, so let's look at what exactly, how do we take these learnings of ours ahead. Okay, so in today's class we will be looking very concretely at monitoring and evaluation. To put it in short, the entire session is based on monitoring and evaluation. I did this piecing together because I just realized when I was preparing the class that maybe I need to piece a lot of things together which was hanging in the air. Okay, so now we are very clear and firmly rooted in this entire process, and now we're going to look at what is monitoring. Okay, what is the different types of monitoring, and how do we actually look at a monitoring framework? Okay, and how do we look at monitoring done concretely in terms of, are there any tools that we need to look at? Okay, then we can look at evaluation and what are the principles and ethics of evaluation. What is the 5 criteria that we require for evaluation? Okay, so in terms of the types of evaluation. In terms of strategies, how do we work out evaluation in terms of actually the steps in conducting an evaluation? So what are those steps of conducting an evaluation? How do we actually go about it in terms of preparing a design, an evaluation using a design? So are there any biases in those designs? What is participatory evaluation? Okay, so when you're talking about evaluation, is it evaluation like say 2 or 3 people coming in and just doing a kind of a, you know, assessment from top, or what is the new phase of evaluation are we looking at? So that is participatory evaluation. And then finally, preparing for an evaluation. We are looking at preparation for evaluation in terms of references, in terms of we are looking at what are the steps required, and also certain important documents and uh, permissions and work contracts, whatever, to be kept in place. We look at all those details, and then finally reporting. Okay, what is reporting in the whole process? So let us see. My objectives, which when I was preparing, I said, let me put it down so that what is your take home from this entire this thing? Your take home is your steps involved in the process of monitoring and evaluation. And how do you understand the strategies of evaluation? How do you understand the process of participatory evaluation and getting all stakeholders aboard? So who are those stakeholders that we are going to take into consideration, take into consultation when we're looking at participatory evaluation? What do you need to do in order to prepare for evaluation? So as simple as that. So these are the objectives. Okay, so this I have already completed. Okay, this is also okay. I had put this slide earlier just to tell you that when you are implementing the project, uh, I think all of us are probably quite good at implementing because you are actually working in the field. So when you're working in the field, you need to make sure that you identify a few key persons that you can work with. I highlighted these points is because when you're working in a when you're rolling out your project, okay, um, you need to get certain permissions, okay, before you start in an area. Like you cannot walk into an area without getting or informing the government people. Because today we are looking at when we're looking at government in sorry when we're looking at government involvement in the whole process, we are looking at getting or informing, like say if you're working at the village level, you need to inform the panchayat, okay, the various panchayat officials there, and along with it also inform the block development officer or the taluka officer as we call him, or the tehsildar, okay. Submit a letter of intent to the local panchayat. That's what I mentioned a little earlier, that you need to meet and inform them. And if you don't meet, sometimes it could be you may not meet the sarpanch because he could be very busy. But the gram sevak is always there in every village. Okay, so make sure that you coordinate with the gram sevak in informing him of your planned activities whenever required. Uh, Now, as I was working out, I started it, but I forgot to continue it. I was looking at, remember when I spoke to you about the proposal? Let me just go back to this because I think it's important to tell you. Like, suppose if these are your elements of your proposal, how much should each part consist of? Like, say, suppose if I asked you 5 or 6 pages, you mentioned that a proposal can consist of 5 to 6 pages. It could go up to even sometimes say 10 pages also if it is a very long and elaborate project, say an integrated approach to a particular activity or particular area that you're working. Say maybe you're working in 20 villages or you're working in one entire taluka. An entire taluka would consist of so many villages. So, but you would take a select villages or you would work with the entire taluka. So in that case, then your project proposal will increase a little bit, especially in terms of the attachments that you need to add to it. Okay, later on. So how much do you think
Sir,
would be?
since you came back to, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, since you came back to project proposal, I had one question at that time. We were
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about phase one, phase two, and phase three, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So normally, I am just correct me if I'm wrong. Normally, when we present a proposal for phase one, we, in case it is an ongoing project, we mention about phase two and phase three as well in the same proposal. So
Yes.
in the phase two, normally we talk about the additional activity, what we are going to do, the additional output, outcome or impact if we are
Mhm.
expecting, and the additional budget what is required.
Yeah,
And similarly, it goes for phase three also. Do
right.
you think that is that is sufficient, or anything more is required to be written with respect to phase two and phase three?
See, when you're looking at, they will not immediately tell you about phase two or phase three because every funding agency has a particular limited period. You know, like say, even if the funding officer usually will have a term of around 6 years, you know, depending upon how long that person is heading that particular funding agency. So usually
Hmm.
it's not for too long. So that person doesn't commit very often for more than 3 years or 6 years is a long time. So that is
No, I'm talking
practically
about 3 years only. I'm talking
yeah
about 3 years.
3 years
Phase
yeah
one, phase two, phase three, all having 1 year time.
1 year, yeah. Then it is acceptable. So if you're looking at 3 years, it's fine. But if you're looking beyond that, it becomes very difficult for any funding agency to commit oneself. But generally, they would look at a 3-year project because the 3 years you can look at steps in that, like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. But even this is like, a little fast in terms of when you're looking at outcomes and impact, especially in the social work field. Now, in a project proposal, you will definitely put in the budget, you will put year 1, year 2, year 3, but you will put year 1 ka budget in the first thing, and then you will put an incremental, increase in the second year and in the third year. Usually there are thumb rules for that, like say 10% of incremental, increase. Unless you have also certain phases where it requires, like say a watershed. A watershed would require phases as in, formation of the committees, the watershed committees, and then later on it will go on to, the actual construction of the structures and the maintaining of the structures. So like if you're looking at a watershed, you look at, all those. So in a watershed project, it would mean a lot more of explanation and a little bit clarity on the budget with regard to that. Again, when you're submitting your budget for the first year, I mean, you would give a detailed budget of the first year and you would give a consolidated budget of the second and the third year with only key factors, like say key important expenses, so that the funding agency will know that along with the incremental 10% that you're looking at in a project. So suppose the project is around say 20 lakhs or whatever it is, so 10% in the second year, or so they know exactly whether it's going to go up to a crore. So what is the liability of a funding agency? Sorry, I use the word liability. What is the commitment of a funding agency in terms of a project? So they plan, when they're planning, they actually plan in terms of saying what is the commitment the funding agency would look at, but they don't tell you all the details, but they kind of commit themselves to one level. Okay, so it is helpful sometimes to, yeah, you can write, but you don't need to write all the details. You need to give an outline and you need to give summary figures in the budget. Okay, so that is the general trend.
Thank you.
Yeah, and coming to this again, which I'm showing you on the screen here, just to tell you very quickly, there would be an element of understanding how many pages that you need to put into a project proposal. Okay, so suppose you're looking at the face sheet is definitely one. If you're looking at the executive summary, of course, definitely just 1 page. Okay, so and then what else comes? So how much should a background be? How much should the needs assessment be? How many pages? The log frame. Okay, so that is something that we can always look at depending upon the intensity of your project. So coming back to what I was sharing, any guesses just to kind of, okay. So for your sake, I have put it up already on the screen. Okay, I've shared the screen. So when you're looking at a proposal, you're looking at maximum 15 pages if it is a massive project. Otherwise, 5 to 6 is fine. You're looking at a project summary, your background, and the capacity. So when you're looking, you start off with your organizational background. That can be 1 page. Your objectives and expected results. Okay, as in you would definitely put it in a log frame, but you'll also put it in a page within the project, and you will see that the log frame is attached in the appendix. Okay, so your core project should not go more than 8 to 10 pages, maximum 15 pages. Okay, so you describe your project activities. Now this project activities is something that the organization commits to in terms of a budget. So they would need to know what you're doing, so therefore your description increases. Okay, you need to describe those activities. Your implementation plan can be around 2 pages. Stakeholder participation is something like a half a page. Risk is something that you need to mention, maybe a quarter or a half page. Manpower or other human resource, I should change that word. Human resource requirement can be 1 page. Evaluation plans and indicators can be 1 to 2 pages, because you could always write it in one page, and then you can attach the remaining part to the log frame. Okay, and then the 10th point is sustainability can be another half page, where you look at cross-cutting issues. I did not mention it earlier, but along with sustainability, you can also look at intersectionality, cross-cutting issues, so that when you're looking at implementation, you're looking at something that catches the eye of the funding agency. Then finally, the budget, you can look at 3 pages, because usually sometimes it is elaborate in terms of smaller things. So yeah, 2 pages also should be sufficient. Yeah. Okay. So this is a little detail. I won't go too much into the detail because I've already shared about it. Okay. I've shared to you about what comes into which section. So you're looking at your results page. Okay. In your results page, you look at the problem statement, rationale, and the results. And this is the description. When you're writing your activities, you need to write down a clarity with regard to what will be done, who will do it, when they will do it, and where they will do it. Therefore, I put 2.5 pages for that. Okay, because there has to be clarity with regard to what you intend to do. Implementation can be 2 pages. Okay, so this has to be a start to end kind of a situation in logical steps. So you will say, like, at the initiation, you will do the needs assessment, then you will carry on with rapport building, you will conduct major activities. So that should be an implementation plan. It should have, if you can do it in a kind of a Gantt chart, that is also helpful, where you put in your activities towards the left and towards your right. In an Excel sheet, you would put up the months. Okay, and you could look at what gets highlighted and what gets a low priority. Then you look at what is a stakeholder implementation, I mean involvement, as I was telling you, participation. What is the risk? Risk also I've explained it to you in the earlier sessions that I've had. Okay, manpower or human resource. When you're writing your human resource, make sure that you also write that the job clarification so that there is no overlapping. Okay. Evaluation, of course, will need to again be put into the LFA. You could add it into the LFA so that it becomes easier. Sustainability, yeah, I mentioned that. Budget is 3 years. This also I had discussed in my previous class. You need to put in the honorarium, remuneration, capital requirement, recurring cash, and what would be your expenses and contingencies. Okay. So that's about it for this part. I now move on to a very important part. Any questions
Sir,
before I move
yes,
on
sir.
to that part? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Don't you think the project proposal should have the information about under which schedule the
Oh
project
yes, yes,
falls, schedule
yes,
7? And one more thing, which the project is aligned with which SDG
yes, yes, yes.
component?
Yeah, certainly, certainly. You're absolutely right. So that will come into when you're writing uh, it will come into this part. Okay. Uh, so yeah. Yeah, it will come into this, and when you're looking at your project objectives, so when you're looking at your project objectives and the results, then you can align it to your results in terms of, does your results meet SDGs? Does your result fall under CSR? Yeah, I can add that. Thank you for telling me that. In fact, I can do it right away. So I'll just do, I can also add it in that. So you can add it in terms of when you're looking at objectives. So people want to see how it is connected to SDGs. Okay. Or whatever other relevant, or you could also look at besides this. Yeah. Okay, fine. So So we'll go ahead and any other thing that strikes you, please let me know so that I can also add it to my presentation. Okay, so we are going to look at M&E. Okay, so what is monitoring and evaluation? Okay, so what is exactly monitoring and evaluation? How do we look at monitoring? And what is evaluation? So suppose if I say, give me a quick kind of a summary of, we'll start off from where you are, as in what do we understand by monitoring and what is evaluation? Some quick pointers, I mean, just to start the discussion on monitoring and evaluation. Okay, suppose, okay, are you aware of, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
so,
sir.
yeah, so if I put down very briefly, very quickly, if I say monitoring, what would be monitoring and what would be evaluation? How would you look at monitoring? Monitoring would be what exactly? And what would be evaluation?
Monitoring will be throughout the project. You are monitoring all the activities, tasks, or the project. And evaluation comes at the end quarter of the project, like last quarter of the project, which tell us the achievement, results, impact.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, so you're right in, so what you're saying is true, as in when you're looking at monitoring, you're looking at, oh, I'm not able to work on it. So when you're looking at monitoring, you're looking at during the project, okay? You're looking at what is the possibility of working within your project. Monitoring, you're looking at saying that uh, I am keeping track of what's happening in my project. So in short, monitoring is like keeping track of what's happening. And when you're looking at evaluation, what you're doing is you're looking at the end of your project. So it's at the end of a project cycle. Okay. Whereas monitoring happens at systematic intervals of the project. Okay. Uh, so when you're looking at monitoring, what is really monitoring? Monitoring is basically a systematic collection, analysis, and use of information. So what you're doing is you're taking information from the project and you're looking at what is happening within the project. Like you have the design of the project. Based on the design of the project, you are collecting information and you are saying, is the project working effectively? Is the project delivering as per the plan? Okay, so you are assessing an ongoing sorry, I've gone to, yeah, it is assessing and analyzing those projects basically on the experiences that is happening within the project. Okay, so it has a learning function. So when you're looking at monitoring, you are learning from the experiences. You are speaking to your staff and you're saying, what has been your experience in conducting this event? What has been your experience of working out this project line? Okay, line item. What has been the resources that you have used? Okay, so suppose you have conducted an event. So what is the kind of resources that were marked out in the project, how much have you used and how much is unspent? How much did you seek to achieve through your outcomes and outputs? If you remember your log frame, so you're looking very clearly and saying, what is it that I have achieved in my project as in terms of results? Okay, so have I delivered as per my log frame? And then you will go on to the third part is then you will say, I have probably made some mistakes along this way. So what is it that I need to change? So you're looking at a steering function. Okay, you're looking at taking decisions and saying, yes, this particular strategy did not work out while implementing this program activity. So let me see if I can change this program activity. Okay, like for example, when you're doing a watershed, okay, and you realize that the actual formation of the farmer clubs or the watershed committees did not take place with a proper consultative process. So it was just a top-down approach. So probably in your monitoring, you realize that the staff, while implementing the project, went about forming watershed committees by calling for meetings based on the Sarpanch's recommendations. Okay, but then there were not enough of leaders built from the community. So your process of experiences that you will gather during the monitoring will tell you, even now there is chance that you could change the process. You could go back to the community and say, is there a possibility to work with emerging leaders from the community? Okay, so you will take a decision to change your strategy. Yeah, so monitoring is basically this process of learning from your experiences, of monitoring the results, looking at the amount of resources spent, and then taking in decisions accordingly. Okay, on the other hand, suppose if I look at evaluation. So if monitoring is within the project, as you rightly said, so then what is evaluation? Evaluation is at the end of the project. It is probably reaching the end of the project, or it is a completed project, program or policy that you want to review, and evaluate. So what do? You make statements about what? You make statements about 5 important areas that we shall see in detail as we are looking at evaluation. You're going to look at relevance. How relevant was the project to the goals, what you have done? How effective has been the implementation of the project in terms of bringing about change in the community? How efficiently has the resources been used? Was there an impact of the work done? Like for example, you have created water structures, but has the water been able to be actually controlled, or has it been able to be arrested? What has been the impact? Has there been regeneration of water sources? What is the sustainability of that project? As in, is there a change that is happening in terms of leaders who are elected, of people taking ownership of the project? Okay. And finally, the third part is whether any changes need to be made at the project, program or policy level. Okay, so an evaluation will tell you whether that project needs to be scrapped, whether that project needs to be carried on with additional funds or additional resources. What is the kind of strategy that we need to use? What is the policy change that we need to put into place so that there is an effective delivery of that project? For example, if you're working with adolescent girls, okay, so is there a need to make a change in the approach? Is there a need to change policy? And how will you effect or get relevant stakeholders in order to make that policy change? Okay, so this is something that evaluation will bring about. So let us go into the details of monitoring and evaluation. So when I look at M&E, as it is normally called, M&E is an important technique that is used in project management. If you go to Oxford Dictionary, it clearly says it is a careful observation of a process or activity to check if it is carried out fairly. That means, has the project been progressing? Is it progressing? Is the activity being carried out as planned? Is it being carried out as per the process recommended? Evaluation is an opinion of the amount, value, and quality of work done. So it's evaluation is conducted at the end. So it gives an opinion of the amount of whether the money is spent, unspent, what has been the value created, and what has been the quality of the work achieved. Okay. So if you notice, M&E actually evolved down very concretely, especially during the 1990s, as it started measuring the impact of social programs, and policies were aimed at improving the welfare of citizens, especially disadvantaged groups. So you see, M&E made a lot of difference to the quality implementation of projects. All social work agencies must use some form of M&E. You know, in the past, when we look at social work, it was had a very charity kind of a connotation. It was understood as something that is done in terms of activities that is carried out. But then slowly, because of a review of the plans and processes and to the interventions, they realized that yes, M&E is basically, you know, something, it's a form that will enable change, and we need to record that change and see how that change is being effected. Okay. But older NGOs would have been not engaging in such processes. But today, if we are looking in the last 5 to 10 years, M&E forms an important part of project, project administration or management. You need to have evaluations. You need to have a fair idea of what the project holder or what the partners are intending to do. Okay. Another thing about M&E is that monitoring is done generally by internal persons. However, when you're looking at evaluation, in most cases, evaluations are done by external people, because evaluation is done, okay, independently by the agency, by the funding agency, or by certain organizations that have an international standing, or sometimes even NGOs that have, as in, they have a kind of a, quality of work done. Okay. So let's do one thing now. We will, before going on to a little clarification of this definition, okay, we will take a short break. And during this break, I mean, you could also reflect in as you're sipping your tea, or you will look at and see what is it that I need to understand about monitoring and evaluation. So I will encourage you, as you take a small break of around 5 to 7 minutes or 10 minutes, try to see what is it that I would like to gain from this session. And if you can come in with a little bit of your own experiences, that will help me to also work concretely at bringing about some concrete direction to my session today. Okay. Otherwise, I will end up giving you general information, but of course, I will give you a few tools also that can also help you to be effective in your monitoring and evaluation. Okay. We'll take a break of around 5 to 10 minutes. Is it fine with you all? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we will take a break of ours. Now the time is 11:48:50. We'll come back at 12 noon sharp. Thank you. I think some of them have left the group, the class. And okay. There is some others also, but let me see. Who else is there? Can you put it in our group, WhatsApp group probably? You can tell them to join. Yeah, I think so. Okay, I think I will start. I might as well start. There were others also in the group. Yeah, Priyanka is joined back. Okay, I'm not sure about the others, but many are not present today. Let's get back to where we were. I'll once again share my screen. Okay. Okay, so let's begin from, let's restart from where we were. I was looking at understanding what is monitoring and what is evaluation so that we can be very clear about the concept itself. So when we're looking at monitoring, we're looking at routine tracking and reporting of priority information. Okay, whereas evaluation is like a systematic collection of information. So that's also one of the primary important parts is when you're looking at monitoring, you're actually putting a system in place, as in routine. It's not like evaluation, which is a one-off thing, but it is routine. And the other thing is that monitoring is reporting, yes, and it is collecting information. Okay, so there is a lot of information that is collected in terms of reports and documentation, so that when you're measuring, you are in a process of comparing as in saying that this is the baseline figures and this is how far we have reached. So it is constantly telling how far we have reached. Okay, and evaluation is on the other saying is that okay, we are not in the progress, but rather we have reached the end, as in the end of the project, and we need to see whether we have achieved what we sought out to achieve in terms of our activities, our outcomes of our programs, and whether it was worth it as in the amount of resources put in, have we actually achieved those results? Okay, so a program is to be judged in terms of merit, as in to say we able to effect change. It is based on the theory of change. We were seeking to look at change in the community, and has that been achieved? It is also important, of course, definitely as a funding agency, they would need to say that we have spent X amount of money. So was it worth the go? Was it worth the cost? Okay, so evaluation provides, in that sense, information about lessons learned, and saying that in case we wish to carry on the project, in case we need to take in a second phase, so what would those decisions need to be taken up upon? How much money more should be put into a project, or is it time to systematically withdraw from the community so that they learn to take responsibility? Okay, so that is an important aspect. So when we're looking at monitoring and evaluation, we're looking at, as I was saying, a systematic collection, whereas evaluation is more of a comparison. Monitoring is looking at how well the project can effectively function. Okay, whereas evaluation is saying, have I achieved what I set out to? Have I accomplished it? And monitoring is based on a set of target activities, okay, targets that we need to achieve within a specified time span. Whereas we are looking at evaluation, which can be, have we achieved it during the lifespan, or have we achieved it at the end of the lifespan? So, is it a summative? Evaluations can be summative in the sense it can be a monitoring exercise in one way, but those are the midline evaluations that I was talking to you in the earlier slide. So when you're doing it in a midline, or when you're doing it within the project, then you're looking at, is it? So it can be formative, or so when you're looking at it within the project. It can be summative when you're looking at it at the end of the project. So you're looking at a summative evaluation, okay, and therefore you are drawing learnings from the completed project. So basically, evaluation is at the end of the project, to tell you in short. Okay, so what are we doing? What is the process that is undertaken during monitoring and evaluation? So when you're looking at monitoring and evaluating, it is like going back and forth. Back and forth as in you are recording information and saying you're documenting it, you're analyzing it, and then you are going back to the operations and saying, can I make a change? Okay, so you're recording it and then you're going back to the analysis again and saying, yeah, this was the previous information. So it is a going back and forth. Okay, whereas when you're looking at evaluation, it is straight. You are going to make recommendations for the future. You're looking at information from the monitoring documentation in terms of report, but in evaluation, you are going a step further. You are going to consult important stakeholders on the way. So what you're going to do is you are going to look at certain stakeholders who have been part of the process, including those who have been actually carrying out the project. So it is, you will be getting information from the monitoring sources, like documentation and reporting, and you'll also be looking at other sources, okay, and then analyzing it and then making the recommendations therein. Okay, so again, the difference is monitoring is at the operational level and evaluations is more at making a change for future changes in objectives and processes. Okay, I hope this basic clarity is there in our minds before we kind of continue. Okay, any questions at this point before I take it to another step? Okay. Okay, so very quickly again, I had done a little, comparison in terms of monitoring and evaluation. Here it is, monitoring objective is to check from the baseline, whereas evaluation is looking at the achievement of results. Here you're tracking and accessing, that is monitoring, whereas evaluation is basically looking at your achievements or your outcomes. And there are lots of judgment in that case in terms of evaluation, because you are making value judgments. Okay, in the terms of monitoring, you are looking at systematic program partner, project managers and key partners. Okay, because they are part of the process of implementing. So it is continuous, and whereas evaluation is time bound, it's say for a few weeks or maybe a week or two, and then there are external evaluators. And of course, Monitoring brings in a strong sense of demonstrative accountability, as in you are putting in corrections during the project. Whereas on the other hand, evaluation is actually looking at demonstrating accountability in terms of policy change, demonstrating accountability in terms of providing donors and stakeholders with the required changes required for the future. Okay. So why do we do monitoring? Basically to check, to record, to look at day-to-day decisions. Okay. Whereas evaluation is more kind of a judgmental valuation, assessing, taking major decisions for the future changes, new projects, new areas, new geographies, whether all those kinds of things. Monitoring is done, of course, as I told you, that is understood. It is done during and at the end. Okay. So now when we're looking at monitoring and evaluation as a whole, I told you the difference. Now when you look at it together, monitoring and evaluation, you're looking at three important aspects when you're looking at both monitoring and evaluation. You're looking at efficiency, effectiveness, and impact. Okay. So when you're looking at M&E, as they normally call M&E in any organization, you're looking at efficiency. So efficiency is like you're looking at how well the program or the activity was conducted. Okay, whether it was conducted in time, was there enough effort and cost, was it well used in terms of, say, like for example, if you're looking at a particular project and you're saying that project required a particular time frame. So has it been efficiently worked out? Like say you had the, I'll take a example which is I think many of you might know, is about the whole question of financial management when you're working with rural or urban groups. Okay, so you're looking at working with women in the community, urban or rural, and you want to make them financially independent. So what would be the time frame that would be required? Okay, the time frame, as in a project, you would be looking at a time frame that ranges, you know, from 2 years or 6 months to 2 years. Okay, depending on formation, consolidation, and you know, and actually moving out in that sense. Okay, so when you're looking at this, you're looking at how much time will it take to form a group. How much time will it take to consolidate that group? And how much time will it take to withdraw from that group? Okay, so you will be looking at those things. In that effect, how much effort would you require? That means how much of staff would you require to put those things in place? And what would be the costing of that? So suppose if you say that you require for X number of groups, you would require a time frame of 2 years. So within that 2 years, you divide it into these various phases of formation, consolidation, and say exiting. Okay. Um, so in this process, you would look at what would be the effort required? How much of staff would you require at the initial, the mid phase, and the exiting phase? Okay, how much of costing would it be? So you will look at in monitoring as to say how efficiently has it been done? Okay, how efficiently is it being done? And evaluation would look at whether these were covered in time, effort, and cost. Okay. Effectiveness, okay, would look at how has the objectives been achieved, as in you will look at the formation of these SHGs and say, has these SHGs or these women been mobilized well? Have these women actually understood the concept of SHGs? Have these women actually understood financial planning, financial management? Okay, so those would be some of the outcomes that you would be looking at. And when you look at these outcomes, you would say, during the project, has the group been formed? During the project, you would look at and saying, what is the status of their savings? Towards the end of the project, you would say how many leaders have been built up in the SHG groups, so that you could take the or you could pull back as an organization from these groups. Okay, or for that matter, if you take another thing is like an issue. If you're looking at an issue, so suppose I'm taking a very common issue like say garbage or sanitation. Okay, so you'll be looking at and saying how effectively has the issue of garbage garbage clearance has been. So you would look at a process, say for example garbage clearance, okay, garbage recycling, garbage upscaling. Okay, so suppose if you take roughly um, some kind of indicators along those lines. So you would look at an issue being resolved as to say, have there been effective systems put into place whereby garbage clearance has become smooth and you know uh, free of has the society become free of garbage, as in clearance has been taken on time and there was proper segregation maintained and people have become aware of the issue. So there would be levels in which you would be looking at how far the issue has been resolved. And the highest would be you would take them through, the understanding of garbage recycling and garbage upscaling and all those kinds of things. So you would have for example, in a city like Mumbai, you would have a housing society that would look at a target issue being resolved along those lines. How effective impact would be, how a market effect or an influence on the target population, as in what was the impact that that particular approach that you have taken has made to the target group and to the community and to the society at large. So in the sense, taking the same example of SHGs, or you're looking at garbage, okay, um, uh, sanitation, put it in another positive word, okay. So you are going to look at how much has the women of the SHGs been able to change a mindset. So you would be looking at an impact. So when you're looking at impact, you would be looking at indicators that point towards impact change. So like as I said in the case of the example of the SHGs, you're looking at change in the mindsets of the women with regard to financial management, finance or holding finance and spending finance. Change in the woman with regard to taking decisions at the SHG level. Changes in the women according to them taking decisions in the family. Changes in the women with regard to taking up leadership positions in society. So that would be an impact indicators that you would be looking at. And you would be looking at a target change in the population along those lines. Now, if I take the other example, which I took about garbage, okay, or sanitation, you'd be looking at impact changes in terms of how has the community been able to stay in a healthy and sanitized community. How far has it reached a level of sanitization? Okay, how far has the measures to recycle been achieved by the said community? Or have the community changed their perspective in using garbage as a source of upscaling into products that can even become a source of income generation? Now, this is something like an impact indicator. Okay, so you could measure all these things that I'm talking about. Okay, is it clear? Am I clear on these points? Hello. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I do hope I'm trying to give some examples so that it becomes clearer and you are able to relate. If you have any particular examples also that you have, and probably we can even you know, effectively work on it. Okay. So when we're looking at M&E, when you're looking at monitoring and evaluation, monitoring, of course, is to look at how we can improve the practices in the future. Monitoring helps us in accountability and taking informed decisions. Whereas evaluation is very systematic and it's at the end of a completed project, and it draws us towards 5 major aspects. Okay. So I think this is one of the important points of evaluation, where you're looking at relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, impact, and sustainability. So anything that we are looking at evaluating needs to cover these 5 important aspects of evaluation. Okay, let us look at these 5 evaluation points, or rather 5 aspects in detail. Just to put what I'm saying into what I had discussed with you with regard to the project cycle earlier. So when we're looking at monitoring, monitoring concretely comes in the implementation phase. Okay. So you're looking at monitoring during the implementation, whereas evaluation is towards the end. And both these things contribute to the redesigning of the project and a transition that takes place at the level of the project and at the community level. Okay. So what is this life cycle that we are looking at? This life cycle is, of course, this is something that we have done earlier, so I'll skip this. So where do we stand now with regard to monitoring and evaluation? Okay, so as I said, monitoring is looking at what has been achieved. Evaluation is more about comparing it to the starting point. Okay, so let's go concretely into each now. Now I will take each of these, monitoring and evaluation, and we'll go a little deeper. Okay, so now what would be the steps in understanding monitoring in terms of a process? The first part is establish indicators. See, indicators become an important part of monitoring, and we need to do this very carefully, because your entire project implementation is determined on the indicators that you set up. It is a next important point is setting up systems to collect that information based on indicators. So you will actually say that if I'd like to collect information on the indicators that I have said, like I gave you the examples of those two, like SHG women and garbage, okay, or hygiene, health and sanitation. Okay, so suppose if I have to develop a system, I would need to say, how do I go about collecting that information that will help me to establish those indicators that I have achieved as per those indicators. Okay, when I mean systems, means I would need to say is what is it that I need to look for in terms of pointing those measurable points that I can pick up from an indicator that will help me to measure the progress that I am able to achieve. Okay, so I'll give you an example of this. Okay, so what is this system that I'm looking at? Now, if you're looking at an SHG, as I told you, you're looking at clear indicators to say whether the women have been mobilized with regard to SHG formation. Okay, you are going to say whether the women have understood financial management and have learned to access financial institutions. Okay, you will look at indicators that will tell you whether the women are capable, or rather have reached a level of taking decisions in the group. Again, I'm looking at different levels: in the group, in the family, in the community. Okay, now if you're looking at all these 3 things, you need to say, how do I collect data about this? So one easy system that will help me to collect data is, what would be a good system? I'm giving you a very concrete example so that it will be easy for you to relate to. Okay, so when we're looking at SHGs, what would be a system that will collect information? Yes, the system of uh, what would be that system? Anybody would like to take a shot at that? what would be the system that will help me to collect data based on the example that I've just shared? Just try to visualize. So suppose if you are doing something like that, uh, what would be the system that you need to put into place? You need to look at your staff primarily, collecting data as in they would need to prepare reports, they would need to develop an MIS system, okay, that tracks the number of meetings, okay, that tracks the women's savings per month, right? Am I on track with what I'm talking about? Yeah. You need to look at a system that look at SHGs in terms of how much have the women saved and how much have they been able to interloan within the group. How much, what is the issues that were discussed during the meeting? How has those loans been connected to those issues? Who are the women who took decisions at those meetings? Because this is all be recorded in the minutes book, right? There would be another book that would be a tool that you would use. Another tool would be, one would be the minutes book. The other tools would be what? The bank books. Okay. Right. Yeah. There would be the visits reports of the outreach worker, or you call him the community animator, him or her. Okay. So you have different kinds of systems that you will put into place. Okay. And you will work it in such a way that it collaborates with the indicators that you set up. Then the process of analyzing will go one step ahead. It will analyze the data using the information in effective project management. As in, it looks at the data and says, what do these trends talk about? So for example, have the women been able to conduct regular meetings, say in a span of 3 months? I told you that monitoring can take place quarterly, half yearly, again the next quarter, and finally at the end of the year. You could have the reports that come in regularly into an MIS. That's another thing that you could do. So that you don't have to wait for the quarter, but you have an MIS system that is inbuilt in your organization that connects to your projects. Now, this is one example I gave you of SHGs. So suppose if you're looking at farmer groups, or you're looking at even say students that you're working with, youth, you're looking at adolescent girls, you're looking at certain target individuals like say addicts, for example. Okay, if you're working, I'm just off the cuff, I'm telling you some projects that are also important in terms of issues. Like so suppose if you're dealing with addiction, okay, so you could even be looking at some of the data that comes in terms of your center, which you probably will be running or you would be in touch with, where you're networking with. So there are lots of things that you can put in place. And one of the most effective ways, I'm telling you through my own experience, because I've worked at the field level and at different managerial positions, wherein I've actually done a lot of monitoring, and my own experience has shown me that how you need to put systems into place in order to be effective in the field. Yeah. So monitoring consists of putting up systems. Okay, you need to first establish those indicators, put up those systems, and then look at it and analyze it, like the picture that you see in the slide that I've shown you. You need to see the patterns that are emerging. Do these patterns speak of the consolidation of the SHGs, leaders emerging, women at the village level taking decisions? Do you see that pattern coming up? You are able to analyze it and you are able to actually take it forward. Okay. So here, these indicators, as I was just telling you in the slide, my information, what I was sharing was already there in this slide. Indicators are signs that tell us how much has been achieved. Okay, it tells us how many times have you had those meetings, how much has the women saved, how often have they been engaged in those activities like saving, those activities like discussing in the meeting. Okay, or the other example which I gave you of garbage. Okay, garbage recycling. Has the two-way segregation method worked in the building housing society? Have the people been able to separate wet and dry garbage? What has been the percentage of people being able to engage in such an exercise? What has been the fallout in terms of collaboration and cooperation in the entire process? Okay, what has been the costing involved in this whole thing? So you're going to ask a lot of questions. Okay, qualitative information also will be part of the monitoring process. What is this qualitative information? I was speaking also in terms of quantitative when I was talking to you about number of meetings. Okay, I was talking to you about amount of savings. Okay, as in the other thing would be, you know, number of days the garbage was cleared, the number of involvement, numbers of flat owners involved, or society owners involved in the entire process. Okay, but qualitative information will capture it differently. Qualitative information is something which I said earlier when I started off my session this morning. Okay, I said, what is it that you need to do during the project? You remember what I said to you? During the project, you need to collect information in terms of case studies, in terms of reports. Okay, qualitative information will figure in those reports, will figure in those case studies, will figure in those what do you call it, uh, reports, or what do you, I forgot that word. Anyway, so it will figure in those processes, process documentation, narrative documentation, and there you will get your success stories. So monitoring will bring out those aspects and tell you where is it that you need to change. Okay, so sometimes numbers don't tell you everything. So qualitative information is important. And once it is analyzed, you know whether the project is going in the right direction or not. Now, how do I figure all that I said to you now in terms of monitoring? How do I figure it and connect it to the class that I taught you last week? Last week, I taught you about log frame, right? All of you are with me in the class? Hello? Yeah, are you with me? Can I
Yes,
get
sir.
yes? Yeah. So now, when last time I spoke to you about the log frame, now you notice I told you in the last class also, I will come back to this log frame during my monitoring and evaluation class. Now is the time I'm coming back to this whole log frame, and I'm going to tell you that if you need to have that finesse, or rather you need to have a good planning approach with regard to your project when you're planning it, but also during implementation you need to have a clarity with regard to your planning. And where does it figure in? It figures in the same log frame that you prepared. And I'm going to now show you that in that same log frame, there are two other columns that you need to put into that log frame in order to understand with clarity, how will I monitor this project? And once you're able to do that, friends, you will realize that there is something very beautiful that will emerge in the monitoring process. See, very often when you will be reading about and reading a lot of literature about monitoring, I'll tell you through my own experience of monitoring, these are some little tips which you will not find so much in books. I mean, they have written it, but what I mean to say is that you will, these practical aspects you will not see. uh, I, I look at the log frame approach in monitoring and evaluation. So what are we looking at? Okay, as we know, log frame is what I taught you in the last session about log frame. Log frame was developed. I think I mentioned this slide in the last this thing. Okay, so but this is a log frame I taught you in the last class, the 9 steps. Okay, the 9 steps in a Excel sheet. Okay, you looked at analyzing a project context through a problem, by doing various kinds of analysis, like stakeholder analysis, problem analysis. You developed the objectives, you looked at activities, you looked at the resources in terms of inputs, and then you also looked at certain indicators and you analyze the risk. Okay, now and you began to understand the assumptions behind it. Now, what we will do is we will need to look at how we can take. Okay, I've jumped to evaluation. I'll come back to this again. I will just open up the Excel sheet and I will lead you to that. Just a minute. Give me a minute. I'll just open up the Excel sheet. This is what we did in the last class. Yeah, I'll just open up. Okay, so in the last class we looked at this log frame. We we developed timesheet, strategies, and budget. Okay, we go back to this log frame. Okay. Okay, we go back to this log frame of we took the situation of health situation and improved access to livelihood. If you remember, that was the problem tree that we worked together as a group, and this is what we looked at. Okay, now here we need to look at these indicators, right? We picked up these indicators and 1 minute. Okay. So this is what we were looking at. So we were looking at this was our outcomes. Okay, there were 4 outcomes. I'm not able to go up. I'm not sure why. Anyway, so we looked at the first outcome, improved access to medical facilities, right? So in this, we looked at our input cost. Okay, we looked at our activities, outputs. Okay, and our outcome, main outcome was improved access to medical facilities. Now you'll notice that we looked at indicators, right? We looked at indicators and we said, what is it that will help us to know as to whether we have actually been able to carry out these activities well in terms of cost, okay? How effective, how efficient we were and how effective we were, okay? So you will notice that efficiency lies in the ability to achieve our quantitative results, whereas effectiveness will give us insight into how qualitatively we have been able to achieve our outcomes. Now, these indicators should tell us whether quantitatively or qualitatively we have been able to achieve the outcome that you can see on your screen. Okay, I think you can see my screen, right? So in this screen here, you have the outcome of improved access to medical facilities. Okay, the indicators state that means of verification. Okay, and you need to also the means of verification. Okay, so for us, we need to add 2 more columns. One is the person responsible. So I'm going to add a few more columns to this. Okay. Let me just take this a little further. So you will put in here, okay, the person responsible. You will also, you will say, what is the tools that you will require in order to conduct this monitoring exercise. Okay, so when you are with the same log frame, you will go one step ahead. Okay, and you will say that this is the information that I require with regard to understanding whether there has been an improved government health infrastructure. Okay, you're going to look at medical equipment, provision of medical equipment. Okay, so medical equipment has been provided. Okay, but you need to say, how do I actually measure it? Okay, how will I actually measure that? So you will be looking at this in terms of indicators, okay, and means of verification, okay, and you will be also looking at the person responsible and the tools. Let me put this down, okay. Okay, tools for monitoring, okay. So you will be looking at the tools that you'll be using for monitoring. Okay. Now suppose if you will actually going to track this, how will you track it? Okay. What will be the tools that you will actually use? Like, for example, you will check the documents, okay, but you will also go about, you'll use certain tools to collect the data and to keep it, and who will be the person responsible. Okay, so like in this case, who would be the person responsible in order to collect this information? Hello. Can I have your participation in this, because then it will become easier for me to continue and do it meaningfully. Like in the case of this, what will be the tools of monitoring? You will have a kind of a survey kind of a tool. Can I put a survey tool? Because this is something that you would need to collect quantitative data, right? Okay. Who can be the person responsible for this? Who can be the person responsible for this? Hello. So in your entire understanding of the organization, there would be levels of people in the organogram, right? There would be people who would actually work on the project at the grassroots, but there would be certain intermediary staff. So normally project monitoring is done by intermediary staff. Okay, you could do the analysis with the team together, the reflection exercise. Okay, but usually when you're looking at monitoring, you're looking at some kind of intermediary staff who would take it. But you could also use the staff at the grassroots to collect the data if it is something that is cumbersome, that is difficult. Okay, so but on generally it would be the person responsible would be, say, like in this case, it would be the program coordinator. Okay, so the program coordinator would do try to work out in such a way that he or she would be visiting the field, say maybe once in 2 weeks or probably once in a week, depending upon the magnitude of the project. Okay, so suppose if the person responsible in this case of making sure that the budget has been utilized in terms of the purchase of the equipment. Okay, so and also if it is collecting data on the number of people, like in this case it is some kind of medical equipment, like example given was an oximeter. Now suppose if there is you're looking at certain outputs like improved government infrastructure and the provision of medical equipment. Now you notice provision of medical equipment and the activity, one more activity that can be done so that it becomes very logically clear would be want of space, other we'll have to go down, is the utilization of the medical equipment. Okay, So then it will become clear that when you're looking at utilization, the activity, that medical equipment. So you're looking, then when you're verifying it, you will then verify it in the field as to the number of equipment used by the center. Okay, okay, the the specified equipment, okay, used by target group. Okay, uh, okay, number of people and frequency. So now suppose I'm just looking at some of the indicators, like say number of people and frequency. So when you're looking and measuring this, you will include one minute, I'll just go back and see, is there someone come? Okay, I think
I've
someone has.
added him.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I think some Kajal has just joined. No, no problem. Yeah, welcome. So now when you're looking at this, you're looking at the tool in terms of the survey tool, which is able to capture that data. Okay, so that tool is able to capture the data, and the person responsible is the program coordinator. So now when you're looking at working this out clearly, you have created this. Okay. And similarly, you will do it for the other things. Now, suppose if it is testing of kits, the testing kits. So again, you could look at a, uh, you could again look at here again, you could look at the program coordinator. Uh, okay, or you could even look at the outreach staff, okay, who collects this outreach animator. Okay, so suppose if you look at an outreach animator who actually collects the number of population who using that testing, okay, who came for testing, whatever. Another, can you give me a qualitative tool that you can use at this time? So suppose if you're monitoring, suppose if it is in a period of say that quarter, what would be another very simple tool that you can use? You could use a interview method. Okay, you could use an interview schedule with certain persons. So you could have an interview schedule. Okay, so in this sense, what happens is that you will be developing case studies. So suppose if there is something that you would like to document in terms of the progressive, so this would be connected to very clearly. Probably maybe you could use interview schedule in this next thing, because you are looking at progressive decrease in case. Just to help you to identify with this, just locate another such monitor performance measurement matrix. I'll just go to my give me a minute. I'll just identify a document so that we can also see a clear example that I can give you. I'll give you 2-3 other examples. Just let me locate this file. I'll just go to this file. Okay, I'll show you one of the projects which I had worked on once before, so that you will be able to see clearly the measurement, the monitoring plan given in this. Okay. Since I spoke to you a little earlier about SHGs, I will give you the same example of SHGs. Okay, you can see my screen. Hello. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I scrolling up. So this is you will also many authors call it the performance measurement framework. It's actually a monitoring planning sheet. Okay. So there was one more column which I forgot to mention, but that was I mentioned it, but I didn't draw the column. What was frequency? Okay. So coming to this, just say this is the example
Sir,
which I'm giving it to you. Yeah.
excuse
Tell
me,
me.
sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you used a different nomenclature, that is performance measurement. That is equal to evaluation or that is equal to monitoring?
No. This is a monitoring. This is a monitoring framework, but it is the
Oh,
same log frame, but I have put in
okay.
3 more columns in order to make it into a monitoring framework so that you don't multiply the various frameworks that you're using. Okay, the same framework that you have used to develop your project, you're adding 3 more columns to it. That's it. One is the monitoring tool, one is the frequency, and the person responsible. I forgot to add the frequency, but I was talking about it and I didn't add it. Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, so this is a now see I'm giving you the example which I spoke to you earlier about SHGs. Maybe we were not able to connect because we were talking about health, COVID health. But for that also I have it somewhere. I'll have to search for that document. I've created one for even that too. But I'll just show you with regard to SHGs. Okay. So now see this you can see is you're looking at results in terms of so many beneficiaries linked with SHGs. This is a rather old one of mine, but it is quite indicative of what I'm talking about. Okay, so the number of newly started in SHGs, the number of families linked with SHGs. So what are the means of verification you're looking at is SHG records. Okay, so the indicators and means of verification are very important because you are connecting your indicator. You are saying that how do I know that an SHG has been formed? The SHG records will show it. The minutes book will show it. The center records will show it. Okay. And what is the monitoring tool? Okay. You can have a checklist. Okay. Or you can also have a survey document. Like when I was telling you a little bit earlier, you could have a survey tool that you could also use wherein you collect data. The animator, here I put animator, you could also have the program coordinator depending upon the level in which you would like to monitor it at the grassroots. Okay. You will notice another factor as I'm talking to you about monitoring. Monitoring is usually in-house. Not usually, it is always in-house and for that matter. Monitoring is by the entire staff, not entire staff, selected staff of your organization, especially your coordinator, your certain mid-level management people. Okay, because they do it on a periodicity. It is not on a regular daily basis or weekly basis. It is done with a particular frequency, which is usually monthly or fortnightly or month or quarterly. Okay, so that way. So now suppose if it is that, so you have different means of verification, as in you look at how it is, you could use different tools like here it is given focus group discussion. Okay, you could have a checklist, you could have a rating scale. See, these are different tools. And as I was talking to you about uh, PRA tools, I would recommend to you that you kind of become a little expert on the PRA tools. PRA tools, you don't have to fish it out from somewhere else. PRA tools are something that you can develop with your own expertise. You don't have to look for ready-made tools. Please note that. Don't look for ready-made tools because ready-made tools are not available in the market in that sense. You have to devise your own tools. You devise your tools that are contextual to your project. And how do you devise it? By looking at the indicators. Okay, look at the indicators and say, if I have to hold regular meetings, what is it that can measure the fact of regular meetings? Okay, how do I measure regular meetings? So you need to look at that and say, what is the kind of a tool that will help me to measure those indicators? So you will need to look at that. So I've given a few only here, but this will be a good starter for you to see in that sense. So you see how effectively have they been have they been holding regular meetings? Are they managing their documentation on their own? Are they giving input? Is there some kind of a training on financial management? Is there some kind of a mobilization taking place of existing SHGs with the government? Is there monitoring of those SHGs taking place? Okay, so you are looking at the formation of federations in this case. Sorry, I just realized that. So you are looking at a larger level of SHGs. So a cluster of SHGs become a federation. Okay, so this is only a technical term. So yeah, so how are those SHGs taking up village issues? Okay, so these are the indicators that will help you to measure, and when you can measure it, automatically your systems will come into place. Yeah. So just scrolling the screen for you to see the different types of things that I've added here. Okay. Now take for example, you have one of the results is looking at the village panchayat. It's not only the women, but also the village panchayat begins to have their meetings. That was one of the results that they were looking at. Okay. Then also VDC is village development committees. So what are the village development committees? How were they set up? What were the plans of those village development committees? Who are the leaders of those village development committees? So these are the indicators are very important to determine. So I would recommend to you that whenever you're devising your project, look at some real good measurable indicators, because that will lead you to monitor your project well. If you develop these indicators well, believe me, you have done half your project, literally more than half your project. Because what happens is when your indicators are clear, you can assign certain tools and persons accordingly to monitor it on a regular basis, and you as a project head, a CSR head will be looking at those reports and analyzing those reports. Okay. So monitoring becomes a very useful and very technical, I mean, not technical, actually, it's a very practical way of implementing your project effectively and efficiently. Okay. So that is how it is. I've given lots of examples here. CBOs who have applied. Now this particular project was working on a lot of food security issues. So they looked at how they would be actually working on food security. And then they were looking at transparency mechanisms, accountability mechanisms for PRIs, Panchayati Raj institutions. Okay, so how those Panchayati Raj institutions, leaders created at the local level, how they had organized social audit. It's a big project, this one. So this was a big project of this CBOs. If I'm not mistaken, it was over 25 villages that they were targeting in this project. Yeah. And then also some things like, working with irrigation schemes. OK, and so it was a very interesting project. So I just documented it for your sake, just to show you. It's a huge project, quite big it was. So they have actually worked out this in terms of these various outcomes and outputs. Now you notice as we go down, you will see, oh, is it repeating itself? Actually, those were the outcomes on the top, and these are the outputs. And these outputs are being more and more systematically recorded in terms of the number of meetings, okay, number of trainings, and all those kinds of things. Okay, number
Sir,
of.
please share it with us.
Yeah, I'll share it with you. Okay, so that you will get an idea exactly. Now, when I was talking to you about tools, okay, now this is a good way of also looking at a tool. So when you're looking at a tool and when you're developing a tool, it would be helpful if you put down your thoughts. That's what I used to do with the leaders in the projects when I used to go on my visits. So this is one document that we created together with the leaders from the project. What we did is we looked at the tools like, say, focus group discussion, and we said, who are the respondents? Okay, like how you would do in a research, you would look at what is the tool that you will use to monitor the project, who is going to be your respondent, and what would be the indicators that you will be using. So developing a tool becomes very easy then. Okay, so suppose if you're saying you're using a focus group discussion and you would like to have it with the community, what would be the indicators you would be looking at drawn out from the previous framework that you're looking at? So what we have done is we just simply taken the indicators from the framework and then we put it into this and we said, this is what we want to measure. Okay, so then we developed questions along these lines, along these indicators. Okay, and we had focus group discussion for the community, for the SHG leaders, for the federation leaders. for the farmer families, okay, and for the community-based organization. There was also another thing, as I was telling you, there was an interaction planned with PRI leaders. Okay, so what would be the thing? Then there was an interesting tool that we developed, which was called the rating scales. Okay, for monitoring. We developed a rating scale for an SHG. How do we rate the SHG that it is progressing from point A to point B to point C? How do we actually rate it? So we looked at certain indicators along efficient functioning, like say, for example, has the SHG come up with bylaws? Has the SHG elected leaders? Now you notice the rating scales has very specific pointers. Okay, has the SHG attendance registered? Has the SHG's minutes of the meeting? Does the SHG have an agenda for every meeting? Okay, what were the topics of discussions held during the meetings? What was the saving register? How far has it been updated? What was the interlending done? The amounts of interloaning done in a meeting, and what was the purpose for the interloaning? Okay, very interesting point, because we were so excited as a group. I still remember the whole group got together and they actually worked on all these things. So I put it down as examples. This is drawn from field experience, students. This is not drawn from textbook. Okay, so federations and all those kinds of things. Now this is another interesting tool that we developed, was checklist. We sat down and we actually developed checklist on various things that we needed to put into place within the project, like checklist with regard to certain SHG documents. So when you're looking at SHG documents, what is it that we need to look at? So this checklist was minutes book, individual passbook, SHG saving accounts, book, registers containing quotations, loans, amenities, attendance registers, bylaws, resolutions passed. Now this is this was a fantastic project which I was working on. So they had actually worked on such details, So it was very interesting to work with them. Now see, a simple thing, they were working with farmers. So they even looked at a soil testing report. So they looked at a checklist for a soil testing report, So in a soil testing report, what should be included and what should not be, what can be measured. So VDC documents and all those kinds of things, okay. Checklist for field verification. This is another monitoring exercise. For suppose if your program coordinator is going to the field. So when your program coordinator goes to the field, has a proper checklist or rather a proper direction, just doesn't go for a visit like taking a walk in the garden. Okay, so what does this project coordinator actually do? So he checks what is his observation. So that can also be another thing. Okay. So these were some of the activity monitoring tools that we looked at. Okay, fine. Give me some examples. These are the actual tools that were developed within the context of a project. You can have tools of all types. OK, so now this was a tool developed for focus group discussion for farmers. So they looked at farmers and they looked at, what is the number of families practicing organic farming, for example, and if they are preparing. So what is the name of the crop? What is the manure use? How much acres are they covering? What are the growth promoters? And what is the duration of application? Now with this kind of a rich data, now you can imagine if this is collected on a quarterly basis, and this is based on the baseline. Mind you, many of these points have come in from the baseline. Okay, so they have actually figures to compare with the baseline. So when you're looking at a monitoring exercise, you're looking at concrete things. So suppose if you're looking at over 25 villages, you're looking at the number of crops covered, the type of manure used, and the acres and this thing, and also you would have also the production. Okay, I'm not sure whether it came in this or in another thing. The production. So suppose if you're looking at a particular crop, like say paddy. Okay, so for 1 quintal of paddy, what was the growth in the production? Okay, and did it make any difference because of the manures used in terms of organic and growth promoters? Okay, so this is an interesting exercise. If you could, area bottom. Now this is something about agriculture. I'm sure not many of us may be interested in it, but many of these things were used actually in the field. So, and there is a lot more. I've just used a selected few to show you that. There was one SHG monitoring also. There was one SHG rating tool. I'll have to search it somewhere in my database. Very interesting rating tool that we bought out on SHG monitoring. It was actually a 10 to 15 indicators with a numbers. So at the end of it, you could actually number your SHG in terms on a On a, say, you could give out of 100 marks, you could tell whether that SHG was functioning at 30%, 40% or 80%. Okay, very interesting tools developed by the staff of the organization. Okay. So this is a very interesting thing. I'm sure it will excite you a lot in terms of how to go about it. Okay. Okay. Any questions? Okay. I now go on to another important aspect is after monitoring is to look at evaluation. And as I was talking to you about evaluation, evaluation hinges on 5 important criteria that we can look at when you're looking at evaluation. I think many of us would be interested in this aspect of evaluation, as in we'll be looking at evaluation at the end of the project. Now, suppose if it is an in-house evaluation, so this could be also effective. This could be also a very insightful exercise to do if you can look at these criteria when you're looking at evaluation. Okay. Okay, I'm just taking a sip of water. Yeah. Okay, so when we're looking at evaluation, you're looking at certain questions that you need to put up. You know, I put it down as questions because then you'll remember it easily. I'll just go to the presentation mode so that we can go through it quickly. Okay. So then when we're looking at evaluation, we're looking at certain questions that can be raised. So one of the first questions that we're looking at is how effective has been this evaluation? How efficient has this evaluation been? Okay. Sorry. I was trying to, my computer is a little bit slow. Okay, so we're looking at 5 important parts, as I was telling you, how effective, how efficient, and actually before that, one important point is how relevant it is. Okay, then we're looking at impact and sustainability. Please try and remember these 5 points as a thumb rule. As in, wherever you're going for an evaluation, you must make sure that these 5 criteria are kind of covered. So what is this relevance? Relevance immediately points out to the goal of the project, as in, how relevant has been the intervention to achieve the goal of the project. You understand what I mean? Is that you have planned this project, okay? You have planned these activities. You are evaluating and saying that I've completed these activities. I've completed these particular programs. How relevant it has been to achieve the goal and the major outcomes of the project. Okay, so you're seeing the relevance of the project. Let me go to that slide probably, then you'll be able to relate to what I'm talking about. Yeah, when you're looking at relevance, you're looking at to which the objectives of the development interventions are consistent with beneficiary requirements and partners and donor policies. So as in, you're looking at saying, am I actually achieving the objectives for which I've planned this development initiative? Okay, is it consistent with the requirement of the beneficiary group? As in to say that will the people for whom it was intended, did they actually, was it actually required for them? You could have certain things that were totally irrelevant to the project. Whether you conducted that particular training program, it's totally irrelevant. Okay, you could arrive at saying, oh, I wasted over 80,000 for this training program, but was it relevant to the project? Was it really relevant in terms of meeting the beneficiary requirement? And also the partner policies and the donors policies. Okay, did it really fulfill all those kinds of things? Okay. Then you're looking at effectiveness. When you're saying how effective has it been? Effective is doing the right thing in a project. Did you do that training because it was important to train those SHGs before they actually went into financial management? Was it effective? Did it bring about a change in the mindset? Okay. Did you do the right thing? In short, efficient. Okay, are you doing things right? Now, this is a play on words. I mean, just to make my slide a little interesting, I put this down. Efficient means, how have you been able to use those resources in the right way, in the right manner, as to say? Did you spend, for example, costing, did you spend 100 rupees, whereas it was required to spend only, say, 30 rupees? Okay, did you overspend 70% of the budget? You know, sometimes what happens is in a thing that so you're looking at costing, you're looking at the number of people that were there in the project. Like for example, you had a staff of 4 people at the field level. So were 4 people sufficient, or did you really require 8 people to actually make your project more impactful? Okay. So, or did you have 8 people in the field, and actually speaking, if with 4 people you could have done a better job? Okay. Was it efficiently done? Okay. So you're looking at all those kinds of things. Then you're looking at sustainability and the impact, actually. So 2 important things is sustainability is looking at are you actually doing a project that will make a change and will actually continue after you have undertaken it? You know, so are you meeting the needs of this community, without compromising the future? Impact would be in terms of long-term impact. Is there some kind of a positive or negative impact for the future? Okay. So taking each of these 5 points, I'm just going very quickly. I'll go through it because I'm looking at the watch constantly as I'm talking. I've got to cover also participatory evaluation and a little bit of reporting. So when we're looking at evaluation, as I was telling you, these are the 5 points. So when you're looking at relevance, some of the questions is, to what extent are the objectives of the intervention valid? As I was telling you, when you're looking at relevant, you're looking at the goal of the project. Remember these points, looking at the goal of the project. That means to say that, we set out to achieve a particular objective to, for example, the SHG. Okay, you set out to change the mindsets of women towards financial management, to make them empowered in the process. Okay, do you think that is still valid? As in, have the women really been empowered to save? Were they able to actually have money to save, or were they, or did they earn money, or did they take money from their spouses, or were they not able to continue that saving? So, I mean, or the women suddenly migrated, as a result, they didn't have access to the savings, or rather they were not able to access the project holder could not access them. So sometimes you find that the objectives are no longer valid. Okay, so is it relevant to the project, or you simply had something in the project and suddenly there was a risk and something happened and the project went the other way? Okay. Are there activities and outputs which are consistent with the overall goal? Okay. So if you said you wanted to do financial management and you didn't have a training, you just started with meeting the groups and you told them, "Arey bhai, thoda saving karenge." So you started, women have no idea for what you're saving. So they just start saving. And then suddenly somebody says, "Oh, I will not save because that lady did not put in money." So, how did you plan your activities? Did you actually plan it systematically, like saying, I will first do a training, get the women, kind of have a perspective and then begin to save? Okay, so you're looking at steps in the process, you're looking at activities, and you're looking at outputs that are systematically graded and leveled so that you reach a particular outcome. Okay, so are these activities and outputs consistent in terms of the impact that you are looking at? Effectiveness, as I told you a little while earlier, is that you need to see, was it effective? I spent 100 rupees. Okay, but did that 100 rupees really have the impact that it should have brought about? Okay, as in, the thing is that I could have spent lesser money in that and achieved the same outcomes, or I should have spent more money in order to achieve those outcomes. Okay, so to what extent was the project achieved? To what extent was it likely to be achieved? What are the major factors influencing the achievement or non-achievement? So what you're looking at effectiveness is how effectively it had been carried out with resources, money, persons, okay, time. So these are the indicators that will tell you how effectively. Could you have done it in 3 months? Do you require 6 months to conduct a, a, a process of change of mindsets? Okay, so that will tell you how much have you achieved. Effectiveness is equal to achieve what is desired. So you want to make a change, but actually how much has been achieved. Okay, sorry. Efficiency is how well your activities were cost efficient. Okay, what did I say? Actually, that was what I was talking to you was actually about efficiency. Sorry, I used the wrong word. It is efficiency. What I was talking to you about cost, time, and you know. So effectiveness is how effective it has been in bringing about the change that I was looking at. Sorry, I was talking about this. I meant efficiency. Okay. Now we're looking at impact. Impact is saying that what has happened as a result of that intervention. Is there a real change in the life of the people? Okay. What was that real difference that that intervention has made to the beneficiaries? How many people have been affected positively or negatively? See, impact usually is seen at the end of the project or after the project, maybe after 4 to 5 years of the project. Okay. Now we need to measure that impact. We think we have reached a particular area, like you can see in a little graph here. Okay, we are looking at reaching a particular point, but really speaking, the impact is much lower. Okay, taking the same example of SHGs. Okay, the impact desired would have been that women have now been able to access finance and have become more vocal in bringing out issues that affect themselves and their children. Okay, now that would be something along the green line that you can see on your screen here. But actually, what is the reality? The reality would be somewhere around a little lower than that. And to say, yes, they have been able to speak, but not really when it really came to voicing their opinion, they were a bit silent. So you will need to see what was that impact. Where did it really uh, uh, where did it really fail, and why did it fail in those areas? Okay, what was it that was negative in the sense of why didn't the women speak up openly? Okay, so that is something that we can look at. Okay, any questions so far with regard to one more point is left is sustainability. Okay, so sustainability you're looking at in terms of, sorry, this goes so fast. Okay, sustainability in terms of you're saying is how well the project can continue after you have completed. So when you're looking at the impact, when you're looking at evaluation, you're looking at how your project can continue. Okay, so to what extent did the benefits continue after the intervention is completed? And what are the major factors that influence the sustainability of the intervention? Okay. Okay, any kind of queries at this point? Hello? Am I clear? Anybody can kind of give a response?
Yes, sir.
Any experiences to share, just to break the monotony of me speaking? Any experiences that you want to share? You have conducted evaluations?
Sir, I'm an implementing person, so no. I got it done by other people, the evaluation, but not myself.
Yeah, but I'm sure monitoring would have helped you, to see that where your processes can be the gaps in your own implementing, no?
Yeah. That we have done, and we have done the course correction also many a times.
Very good, very good. Course correct. But what is it?
But evaluation, no, I haven't done since me being a implementing agency.
Okay, yeah. So evaluation, yeah. Evaluation is usually, it's better done by a third party. You know, I would recommend that you have a third party evaluation because they can be more objective. Okay.
and
Now when we're talking
and it
about,
will have weightage also if it is done by an outsider.
yes, yes, it has weightage in terms of, you know, credibility, because then they'll say that you have not done self appreciation because
Exactly.
yeah, other than they'll say, huh, you have done the evaluation, that means there was bias in the evaluation. Okay.
But
Yeah.
since I was listening to your lecture, sir, I was just thinking.
Hmm.
Recently, I have made up my mind to hire one person who would be
Hmm.
called as monitoring and evaluation officer.
Hmm. Okay.
Because since my programs are increasing every year with
Yeah.
not only number, even with
Hmm.
a lot of budget and all that, I
Very
thought there should be somebody in house who would
absolutely.
be doing monitoring. I mean, dedicated person rather than me and my team doing everything, implementation as well as monitoring.
Yeah.
But
So monitoring.
now it's a question that he should be called only a monitoring officer, not monitoring and evaluation.
Yeah, yeah. Evaluation is basically, I'm coming to the types of evaluation. So some people use the term interchangeably, but actually monitoring is a very specific exercise, you know. And, you know, one of the most beautiful projects which I see monitored so closely is these government projects on, you know, those TI projects and those other projects of HIV AIDS and all their projects. They have elaborate monitoring processes. If you like kind of really want to know how things are being monitored, they have actually, we had one project, you know, when I was working with Cletus India, there was a project, you know, where they were implementing this HIV AIDS project, and the monitoring part of it was so intense, you know. For that matter, even the college is doing one Saksham project, which is they are primarily monitoring and evaluating the projects. So monitoring is quite an intense activity. Um, yeah, if you have one person overseeing the whole process, it makes sense because then the person is at it in terms of closely following the processes that need to be put into place. Because the person implementing doesn't have the time to see the systems that are in place. You know? So focus on your
Exactly.
systems in place. Yeah. Now coming to types of evaluation, you know, we know of different types of evaluation. You know, so there are different types of words also used. Of course, each one of them have their own meaning. Okay. So one of the types of evaluation that is gaining into prominence is the whole understanding of participatory evaluation. That's how it's figuring in your syllabus, and it is very meaningful to have participatory evaluation because, as I just pointed out to you, that you have third party evaluation, but the third party evaluation is initiated in a participatory style. What do I mean by participatory style? When I'm talking about participatory style, that means you are engaging the various stakeholders in the process of evaluation. I'll come to that in a little detail, and I will share with you a whole series of videos at the end of my presentation. It's included in my presentation. Please do look at it when you have the time. Okay, it is called, I think it's one agency called Better, I forget the name of it, Better something. Okay, so this agency came out with a very good series of lovely videos on evaluation, especially the whole process of participatory evaluation. Okay, so coming down to this, there's another thing called process-based evaluation. So process is how, see, this is another term that is used by various agencies. They call it a process-based. That means they're focusing on the entire process of change. They're looking at theory of change and they're looking at what has been the mechanisms that have been put into place in order to effect change. So it is a process-based approach in evaluation. Okay, then you're looking at outcome-based evaluation, which is the RBM as we know it as results-based management. Okay, which I taught you on log frame. So you're looking very clearly at measurable outcomes in the whole process of evaluation. Okay, so you have the outcome-based evaluation. Then you have a self-evaluation in terms of a 360-degree evaluation also, as in the organization looks at them being evaluated from all the angles, as in you look at your own self, you look at your peers. It's normally called a evaluation that is 360 because it involves your stakeholders, it involves those who are your colleagues, the implementers, the actual primary stakeholders, that is your beneficiaries, okay, even the funding agency and certain important other stakeholders who are not part of your project. Okay, so you have a 360-degree evaluation, and then you have a goal-based evaluation. This is a very broad-based evaluation which only focuses on outcomes, or rather your vision and your mission statements, and says, are you achieving your main mission of your organization and your project? Okay, so let's go into some of these things. So when I was just talking to you, participatory is when all the stakeholders of the agency are involved in the process of designing, carrying out, and interpreting the evaluation. So there's an entire evaluation is not just done ad hoc or in the air. It is done through a whole process of getting those people involved at looking at the project and reviewing it with a purpose of you know, understanding whether they have actually progressed, and why they have progressed and why they have not progressed. Okay, so it is, everyone has a fair share in the development of that entire project. Now, process, as I was telling you, is about the whole process involved in the project, the dynamics of the project. So you're looking at just not outcomes. So when you're looking at process, you're just not looking at outcomes. You're looking at every step of the project and saying, was this step followed? Was this, did they compromise on this? Okay. Like, for example, I'll just give you an example to make it more easy. So suppose if you are doing a project wherein you are looking at change in the mindset of the people with regard to financial management, okay, or they're looking at change in the mindset of the people with regard to governance, okay, local governance. So you are going to look at steps. How do you achieve those steps? The steps would be, say, like, for example, community mobilization, you know, training of local leaders, developing local leaders, okay, trainings on financial management. So you would have clearly defined step 1, step 2, A step, B step, whatever it is. So what would be those process and delivery mechanisms that you're looking at, and the linkages? Literally, you will have a kind of a flow chart. So process is based on a flow chart. You're looking at a flow chart of what you wanted to see as outcomes, and you're measuring those flow chart indicators. Okay, so that is process. Then you're looking at outcome based, which I already told you, your outcomes as per the LFA. 360-degree is usually used by those who look at the entire, you know, design and delivery of the project. So you're looking at all angles of the project. Okay. Goal-based is, again, which is looking at whether it has achieved the main impact and outcomes of the project. Okay. Now I come to the most important part of evaluation, which I think all of us at some point will be engaged in as social development actors. Okay, and that is called participatory evaluation. So what is participatory evaluation? As the term suggests, participative. Okay, so you are including people into the process of determining whether we have achieved our results or not. Okay, so this is an approach that involves stakeholders of a program or a policy in the evaluation process. So we are looking at how can things change at any stage. Okay, you're looking at you know, who has been part of the design to the data collection. So let me put it into perspective. Now see, now in the last class, for example, okay, you are all part of my class. Okay, you are designing the LFA. Okay, now when I say participatory evaluation, I cannot have an evaluation and say, okay, I will come and review this project which we designed in the class, okay, without including you as part of the process of evaluation. So because you were involved in the designing of the project, so there has been a clear design involved in the process of the project. So you will have an LFA and a problem tree that you have developed in the beginning. So based on that, you will go back to that problem tree and say, what is the process? I mean, what has been the achievement. So you will go back and review the same points from that same angle, same framework. Okay. So participatory evaluation approach can, you're looking at the impact evaluation designed with the quantitative and qualitative data. You go back to your log frame, look at what is the quantitative and qualitative indicators. Okay, so from that you immediately come to know these are the deliverables in terms of outputs and outcomes, and this is what you are looking at measuring it. Okay, so what happens is you literally, like you seen in the previous picture which I showed you as I begun this part of it, you see there are women who are sitting down and looking at a chart paper that is placed in front of them. Okay, they're looking at what were those outcomes, and those outcomes are put in pieces of paper. Okay, literally I'm telling you, when I do this, when I do this class offline, I actually have pieces of paper, something similar to this, this exercise where we write down our problem statement in negative statements and we put it down on the floor like these women are doing. And this is exactly what we will be doing in participatory evaluation. Okay, you're looking at where you will be actually looking at involving the stakeholders. Okay, so that you are able to measure these various indicators of impact. Okay. Now it is important to consider the purpose of involving stakeholders, as these stakeholders should be involved, okay, to maximize the effectiveness. You have to consider all the kinds of stakeholders, the primary stakeholders and the secondary stakeholders to the extent in which they participate in the. Now, what do I mean by primary and secondary stakeholders? The primary stakeholders would be the immediate beneficiaries of your project. Okay, the primary stakeholders, as in the case of a project, a rural project, as working with, say, change in the community. Okay, in the mindsets of the people with regard to financial management. So what you're looking at is the whole change that so you look at measuring that change. Okay, you will involve who in this project? Like I said, financial management. Who are the stakeholders you will involve? You will involve women. Okay, who else? Anybody who's listening, can you just name the various stakeholders that you can look at? In this case, women would be one. Okay, who else do you think we could involve in the process of measuring whether they have actually progressed or not? Women would be one by default in terms of beneficiaries. Then you would also look at another set of stakeholders would be the, can you tell me? Immediately what comes to your mind along with the women?
Family.
Yeah, exactly. It would be the family and sometimes the spouse. Okay, so because you're going to look at change that you're looking at. Did it affect? How did it affect? Did the training in financial management actually make the woman plan? For example, one very good indicator of financial management is how have the women been able to plan their expenses, monthly expense. One of the exercises I still remember with the women was planning their monthly budgets. Okay, family budgets. So did the women actually do those budgeting at the family level? And were the women, were the men, how did the men get involved in the process, or were there resistance from the men? Okay, so those are the involvement of the stakeholders. Another stakeholder, the children. Okay, did the children actually, was there some significant differences? Like, for example, did the women pay, in the case of children, were they able to pay the fees of the children or take on tuitions, for example? I remember still one example was where the women said, their children need to progress in life, so they need to have some extra coaching. So they send them for support classes. Okay, the organization was running support classes, so they were able to say, we will pay for the support classes or whatever. Okay, so that way you have different kinds of examples that will indicate to you their spending capacity and their ability to make decisions along those lines. So they were involved at every stage. So when we're looking at this methodology, how is it different from other evaluation methodologies? So this author says, Campian, says that participatory evaluation is different from other ordinary measures where you just simply come, a third-party evaluator comes and he does an evaluation. Here you begin to look at, why is the evaluation being done? How is the evaluation being done? who is doing the evaluation, what is being evaluated, and for whom is the evaluation being done. So you see that the 5 W's and 1 H, as we normally know it as. We say, why? What's the purpose of this evaluation? Okay, the process of evaluation, the people involved in the evaluation, and what are we going to achieve at it? So, you know, you actually look at the whole process of evaluation in that sense. It is there are various ways in which we can go about this. One is a self-assessment, a stakeholder evaluation, an internal evaluation, and a joint evaluation. Okay, so there are different ways in which we go about this participatory. A self-assessment is, you know, where the stakeholders themselves, like the primary beneficiaries themselves, rate. You know, there was one organization that we did it. We did it with the Venn diagram. Okay, so we had the various interventions of the organization project on one side. I still remember. We did it on a chart where we did the rows and columns, and then we asked the women to sit in circles where we did a Venn diagram. You know what's a Venn diagram? I think all of us may be familiar with the Venn diagram. It's also called the chapati diagram. Okay. Then we said, based on the activities, how do we rate the various interventions of the project in terms of the proximity to the goal of the. So on one hand, we had written the goal statement of that this thing, and then we said, how would we rate the achievement? Would it be closer? So if it is, would it be closer? So then they would actually, if it is further, then they would make a smaller circle. They took in card paper, they cut it out into different circles, and accordingly they rated it in terms of percentages, and they put it in a, like how you have a galaxy, something like a, you know, the star galaxy. You have different in different circles. So they were all rating it in terms of proximity and distance from the project. Okay, so that was a very interesting exercise. So that is one part of it. Then in addition, we can look at storytelling. Okay, so I'm giving you all these links so you can look at. See, participatory evaluation is very interesting because it is not the mundane kind of evaluation. You know, you can engage into individual storytelling. So where the recipients or the beneficiaries come up and tell stories about what has happened in the project. Okay, where they actually took a decision. For example, one SHG member said, I was going through a financial crisis and we had to admit our mother-in-law into the hospital. Okay, so we had to take an immediate decision. We called a meeting at 9 o'clock in the night. Okay, so that kind of stories are very touching. Okay, so you have the option of stories. Okay, another way in which you could do it is participatory social mapping. Okay, as I was just telling you, one is one Venn diagram. You could also do it in terms of you know, how they can map their current resources, their access to resources, casual linkage and trend and changing diagrams. You could look at scoring and brainstorming on the program's strength and weakness. This SWOT analysis is a very simple thing. I put it last in that sense, but a SWOT analysis also is very telltaling when you're looking at certain projects or certain interventions of yours, and do a simple thing like a SWOT analysis. You sit down with a group and you do a SWOT analysis and say what are the strengths and weaknesses of the project. Okay, so that is yeah. Another way which participatory evaluation, you're looking at to cluster a number of questions. Okay, you cluster a number of questions as into you look at you know putting it. How did you manage the for example, you ask the program coordinator in terms of managing. How do you define this? How do you define this concept? How do you frame this thing? How do you describe it? How do you understand causes? Then you synthesize, you report, you know, so there are different ways. It's a very interactive way of evaluation. The most important thing in participatory evaluation is the process that the group undergoes or the participants undergo. When you do it with different clusters of people or stakeholders, you begin to see the changes in the stakeholder as you're actually engaging in them, the whole process of evaluation. Okay. So when you're looking at managing an evaluation, what are you looking at? Okay, you're looking at asking questions about who will conduct the evaluation, who will make decisions about it. Okay, so it is so consultative in nature that you have a kind of a say that who will take an authority about whether we should continue with regard to, whether we should continue with regard to taking up the project for the next year, okay, or for that matter, a particular intervention like say a livelihood. So suppose if they are doing a particular livelihood like say goat rearing, okay, so who should be involved in the process and how do they decide on certain things? So there's a complete openness in terms of that kind of an evaluation of who is part of it, okay. Who will decide about the evaluators? Who will be involved in developing or approving the evaluation design? So these stakeholders become part of the process of saying what would be the whole process of evaluation and what would be the areas that we will be measuring and how we would determine those indicators and how we would go about those indicators. Okay, what would be the value assigned to those indicators? Okay. So in that sense, the capacities maybe need to strengthen or make the best use of an impact evaluation. Okay, so that is with regard to managing. With regard to defining, again, we are looking at defining is describing what is to be evaluated, as to say that who will be involved in the whole process of revising this theory of change. Okay, so who will be positively involved, with, and also looking at clearly when we're looking at defining this process. So what was the intended outcomes and what was the unintended outcomes? Okay, that can be both positive and negative. Okay, so what do I mean by intended outcomes? Intended outcomes would be what we actually wanted to do within the project. Unintended outcomes would be something by the way. Okay, now suppose if you take the same example of SHGs, the intended outcomes would have been that the women, okay, will begin to save, okay, and later on would be that they begin to interloan within the group. Okay, so this would be the intended outcome. Okay, but then suddenly in the project it could be like it really happened in one of my projects, that the SHG women encountered a situation where a woman who was not part of the SHG was in a difficult situation. There was some serious illness in the family, and the family approached the SHG. Okay, and then the SHG had to take a decision whether to give a loan to the person who was outside the SHG. Now this is an unintended result in the sense that the SHG decided to break their rules or modify their rules and give the loan. Okay, now this is an unintended result. It was not part of the project. When they designed the project, it was not designed that outside the SHG women would benefit from the savings of the women, or women from outside would be impacted in terms of understanding financial management. Okay, so it can be positive, it can be negative also, that the one particular woman was beaten up by the husband. Okay, so that is a negative impact. Okay, it was unintended. It was not meant to be that the family gets destroyed or the family went through a very particular crisis or whatever it is. Okay, so that was not. So you can define all those indicators when you're looking at it. You're setting the parameters of the evaluation in terms of purposes, key evaluation questions, criteria, standards to be. Who will decide the purpose of the impact? Who will set the evaluation questions? What criteria and standards matter in judging performance? Okay, so again it becomes very participatory because they are measuring everything and they are deciding that this means change. Okay, describing. Again here, describing here means collecting and reviving data so that that data actually answers the descriptive questions which has been laid out in the project program. Okay, who will decide whose voice matters in terms of describing? Now it so happens that when in normal evaluations, I'm just giving you a contrast. Okay, in normal evaluations, what happens is the outside evaluator will say, I would like to meet, will take a design. Now this is actually called designing the evaluation. So when in a normal evaluation, what will be the outside evaluator will make a design saying that there are 20 villages and I need a sample of 3 villages. Okay, and I need a meeting with with six SHGs or whatever. Okay, so he will do a random of from the 20 villages. He will select SHGs that run across any 3 villages. Okay, and or 6 villages, whatever the depending upon the numbers that he requires. So he will determine that, and he will determine it by any kind of a random process, okay, of choosing, and so that way. But then, you know, when you're doing it in a participatory, you are actually consulting the stakeholders. So they will decide whether they visit X village or Y village. Okay, they will decide, and there will be a reasoning behind it. Okay, and there will be an explanation behind it. That's what I'm saying. They will decide what matters to them. They will explain what are the impacts that they're looking at. Okay, who will collect and retrieve the data, who will be involved in organizing and storing the data. Okay. So then we go on to understanding the causes, like how we did in problem and problem tree. They begin to understand that why is the project progressing and why is the project at that stage. So what are the causes involved in the whole process? Okay, and this, when you believe me, when you do a problem tree at a grassroots level, it's a different story altogether. Okay, it's not like the problem tree that we did in the class. It is something because it is affecting them. So they give you causes for what is happening. It is not you understanding the causes. See, there's a difference between you understanding the causes. Please understand what I'm saying. There's a difference between you understanding the causes and what the people understand as the causes of the current situation. Okay, so whose voice, and they will say who should answer what question. So I mean, so this is, then you synthesize all that material together and get the data together, and then you will make recommendations. So again, the various stakeholders come together and say these are the findings and how do we synthesize this data. So you see an overall consultative processes right from defining to managing to synthesizing. Okay, uh, and of course creating the report. So how do they share the findings? You know, they present the findings. Okay, and how will they make use, you know, and share the finding, and who will be given access to that finding. So there is consultation at every level. Okay. Uh, so uh, this is what uh, participatory evaluation. He says the first step in participatory evaluation is to clarify what value this approach will add both to the evaluation and the stakeholders. Okay, so and remember that it is quite ethical to involve people to be affected. See, what happens is it's an ethical question because you are working with them. You are not taking them for granted. You are consulting them and taking their permission. So when you're evaluating them, there is no third person coming who's out of the context. So they are able to see whether, and in great honesty, you know, look at who participates, because after all, participation matters, and when the review is feasible. Okay. There's some advice which is given by this author whose article I referred to. There are a number of ways in which you can use this participatory methods to collect quantitative, to investigate causally, to negotiate differences, to score people's appreciation, and to access impacts in a wider area. Okay. Advantages, of course, goes to say that you begin to locally look at relevant questions, look at locally relevant questions. You are accurate with regard to your report. Of course, the program will improve automatically. The very process, you will notice in a participatory evaluation, the very process itself will deliver, okay, the results. So that by the time you end your evaluation, automatically you don't have to work much with the community. They know themselves, will know what to take forward. Okay, it builds capacity, it develops leaders. At the end of the whole processes, you have developed a whole cadre of leaders who will automatically take your project ahead. And of course, it will sustain the organization's learnings. So there are many challenges. Of course, one of the most common challenges would be, oh, apne paas itna time nahi hai. Who has got time that way to go in such an elaborate evaluation? It would mean resources also. But believe me, if you can work within the project resources, there's nothing like this evaluation, because it can be very contextual, it can be very growth promoting, and it can probably even solve conflicts and between and of course conflicts in this case is that one of the challenges what I'm talking about here is the conflicts between approaches, that this is the grassroots, it's a ground top approach, whereas the other evaluation is a top down approach. Okay. Uh, uh, okay, and focusing on participation, data collection, you have to uh, sometimes it could mean also that you need to have a lot of cultural sensitivity and a contextual understanding. You coming up with an evaluation design is not so easy. So in short, to end this part, I'll just say that the benefits of participation in impact evaluation are neither automatic nor guaranteed. Commissioning such approaches means committing to the implications for timing. As I told you, time matters, resources matters, focus matters. So what is the facilitation seal? It's not easy because you need to facilitate an entire group into thinking how have they progressed or have they regressed. Okay, so it is something that you need to facilitate, and it definitely there will be good quality processes that will emerge, and of course you require additional resources for capacity building. Okay, so it's not so easy. So there is one more point in your entire syllabus which I thought I'll very quickly cover, was evaluation principles. Okay, uh, pardon me, I'll just take another 10 minutes because there's some important points I need to cover. Okay, I'm trying to cover all your syllabus also, so that I don't mean leave out points. So evaluation principles is very important, that there are certain principles like accountability and transparency. See, myself coming from a very strong monitoring and evaluation framework background, I would say that there is a lot of important ethical principles also that you need to keep in mind when you're going for evaluation. Okay, you need to be accountable and transparent. I'll come to the steps in evaluation a little ahead, then I think in the following two slides. So you need to be very accountable and transparent and inform people, for example. So those are the principles. Focus on results. Always remember that evaluation, you're looking at what are the results, and you need to look at how you can focus on seeing how much of the results have been achieved. Don't go on finding faults. That is a principle which I think we must all understand as evaluators. You are there not to find faults with the project, but you're looking at saying, okay, we were moving based on the theory of change. We are moving from X to Y. How much has that been achieved? Okay. Provide for the participation of the co-constituents and other partners. Okay, so of course, principle is that you must take into consideration other who are part of the project. Reinforce among other stakeholders a sense of joint ownership. See, this is a very interesting concept of ownership. Okay, one of the things on evaluation really brings about is the full thing of you come to know how much that project has been owned by the project holders, how much the project has been owned by the community, how much that project has meant anything for the people. Okay, and it has to be very ethical, including the responsibility of handling confidential information. Information is so sensitive sometimes in an evaluation, it can make or break an organization. Let me repeat, it can make or break an organization, as in your recommendations can actually either further the funding possibility, and not only funding, I'm not only focusing on funding, as in it could also break the morale of staff, or rather it could encourage them, and it could also how certain at times you could also encounter problems where there could be a misuse of resources. Let me point this out. Therefore, I was telling you that you could come up when you're, especially when you're doing a financial audit. I used to do not too much of financial audit, but basically program matching and financial audit I used to look at also. So when I'm looking at that, I used to say, like I was giving examples of a training program. Okay, a training program, X amount has been spent. You have a training program which was allotted 20,000 for X number of participants. You will look and examine how many participants have attended, what has been the the sign-in sheets, those sheets which the participants, what are the photographs, what are the case studies that have emerged, lots of things. You will look at lots of indicators and tools. You'll use a few tools. But sometimes you will realize that there has been a mismatch between the amount of money spent and the actual change that you see in the field. And you say, where is it wrong? What is going wrong? Suddenly you come across certain information that could be very, questionable. How do you handle that confidential information? I wish I could have a discussion on this, but because of a lack of time, I cannot do it. Offline mode, we could actually do that. So, it is important, you as a mature evaluator, how do you handle such situation? I'm not giving you answers for all this. Experience will teach you, or we can have an offline discussion on that sometime else. So what I would say is that evaluators must have a personal and professional integrity. That means you as a person yourself must be a person. I mean, I'm not saying good or bad. The fact is that you should have your own principles on which you live by. Okay. Evaluators must respect the right of institutions and individuals to provide info. Don't misuse this is an important slide, please note. Don't misuse the information in confidence that has been shared to you. Ensure that sensitive data cannot be traced to source. Now, when you're giving your evaluation, even when you're writing up your reports, I used to write reports and I used to make sure that names are not mentioned in the report. You kind of, when you're writing, you write it in a little bit of a generalized way so that people don't get pinned to a error. You get what I mean? Like, suppose if there is a report that you're writing, it should not be that somebody loses his or her job, but the important thing is that the project progresses. Okay, sometimes it could be I'm not saying that. Sometimes there could be really misuse of funds, but let us not jump to conclusion. You must be sensitive to beliefs, manners, customs. Okay, what I mean by here is whenever you go into the field, I think these are social work principles. You go into the field, please do not take beneficiaries for granted. Okay, they are sometimes tribals. Don't think that you as an evaluator can come at any time. Please plan your schedules. Please respect the target group. Okay, especially tribals and especially communities who do not talk back to you. Just because you're an evaluator, they will get scared. Literally, I faced such situation where people, including the project holders, have got so scared when the evaluator comes. Okay, I'm talking about third-party evaluation. The evaluators must be sensitive and address issues of discrimination. So suppose if there is a discrimination happening, how do you handle that? Literally, sometimes it is an intervention process yourself. You may handle a situation where there could be two groups existing in an evaluation which are at loggerheads with each other. You have to be perceptive enough to pick out these trends and probably very subtly bring it out into your report or discuss this with the project holder. Evaluations may uncover evidence of wrongdoing. Now, this is something I have faced many times, wrongdoing. How do you report this discreetly to the investigative body? Do you yourself initiate an inquiry into misconduct or misuse of funds? Okay. On one occasion, I did it. I ordered an inquiry into a misuse of funds. I mean, that was a rarest of rare occasion, but I couldn't help it because there was something very serious. Okay, but it could happen. I'm not saying that. The evaluators are not expected to evaluate the personal performance of individuals. You're not interested in the personal life, but what you're looking at is as per the deliverables of the project. Okay, you must understand it in the context of the project and also based on certain principles. Okay, so that is important. I spent a little time on this because ethics are very important. Okay, advantages and disadvantages. I think you will understand this. I think it has come out, so I won't waste too much of time on this. Okay, there is one more thing which I would like to focus on when you're looking at participatory evaluation. Is the whole preparation. What is the preparation required when you go in for an evaluation? So suppose you are appointed as a third-party evaluator, okay, or you as an M&E officer really go down to the field. What are you looking at? Okay, what is the processes required to be put into place, or how do you go about it, and what is the reporting that you're looking at? Very quickly, I'll take only 5 minutes on this before we end. Okay, so when we're looking and preparing for an evaluation, kindly note that get the terms of reference signed by the organization and the person conducting the evaluation. So suppose you're doing an evaluation for X organization, make sure that you write a TOR. It's called the terms of reference. In that terms of reference, you mention the objectives, the time frame, the necessary ethical permission sought. And of course, you may add other things which are not written in the slide. Like for example, you can give an entire schedule. I think I'm coming to the next point. So you write a letter to the project holder, partners, or the stakeholders, and share the schedule and the sample of the group selected. Request for the required documentation to be kept ready. Okay, and also share with them if you want a process that you are engaging. Like say, suppose if you're going to use a tool, you may not share the tool, but you can tell them that you are going to use certain tools like a focus group discussion, or you're going to use a particular survey which can be confidential in sometimes. Okay, so you could use a survey tool, or you could use an interview method, or something like a PRA. Sometimes a PRA is very helpful, especially if you're going down to the grassroots and you're working with an SSG, you do a PRA exercise with them. Okay, and actually do one of the PRAs so that it confirms the baseline or it negates it or whatever. Okay. Another very important point when you go in for an evaluation, remember to prepare for your travel and stay arrangement. Don't wait for the organization to arrange it for you. You are not a boss. You are going there with an assignment. Okay, so arrange for all those things. Like don't take it for granted like you're coming from a a better position so that you can just dictate or whatever it is. I know many times evaluations have been done and the officers who come there literally like they get a 5-star treatment. But that is not required and uncalled for. I will say that very firmly, it's uncalled for in a project. You need to be like a simple, officer, and you have come there for a purpose. So please stay for that purpose alone. Okay, you know what I mean. So arrange for the required tools, copies, and translations in required. Translators, what I mean translators is suppose if there's a language that you don't understand, make sure that you get a translator. Last minute, don't rely on something, that is not authentic. Use the time available to meet multiple stakeholders. So now what happens is when you go for a evaluation, sometimes if you plan it, of course, you will not have time slots that are vacant. But it could be that there could be modifications in your time thing. So if you go there to the field and you suddenly realize that there is another stakeholder, you can look at the time and arrange your time in such a way that you can also meet multiple stakeholders. So you need to carefully plan for your evaluations and the various combination of sample groups that may emerge. Okay. Now, when you go there, what are the documents that you can look for? These are the listing of the various documents that you can look for when you go for an evaluation. One thing is, of course, the organization profile. You can look at their registration documents because in case you're going in from a funding agency, you'll require to look at some of the authentic documentation. You can look at what is the area profile map. You can look at inventory, stock registers, asset registers, look at logbook of vehicles. Many time organizations use vehicles. What are the phone call records? Of course, now we have mobiles. When I used to also look at phone call records sometimes to understand the number of calls made in terms of actual interventions made, photocopies, HR policy, finance. See, this is another thing that you know how good the organization is and how well organized in terms of the policies that they have in place. What is the letters that they have written? Older organizations would even have incoming and outgoing letters, registers, communication program register. Now, see, this is another thing that many organizations don't keep. Like you have a register that makes notes of all the people who come in, who register for their program. So suppose if they have a training program, you have a training book with the number of people who came in with their names and their signature and contact details. Okay, like a phone number. So you have clear registers in place that speak of the implementation of the program. Of course, newspaper recordings you can look at, visitors registers, photo albums, event plan sheets, event evaluation sheets. Okay. This is another important document that you need to look at. It's the entire documents with regard to the project itself. So are there project documents? So some of the projects you can look at is there a project objectives on a chart? Are there program implementation plans? Is there a logical frame in the file? Sometimes even it is not in there in the file. And there are some things happening in the field which is not at all connected to the project. See, you will realize these discrepancies when you go onto the field. Activity lists, timelines, plan schedules. Okay, do the staff have planned schedules, yearly, quarterly? Do they have monthly meetings? What is the record on the meetings? What is the training registers in place? What are the SHG registers in place? Are there any monthly reports being recorded by the staff? What is the monitoring reports of the staff which is taken care of? Project completion reports. Financial. This is another aspect. If you are competent enough to look at financial documents, you can look at some of the things like a journal book, cash book, ledger, separate bank registers, bank reconciliation statements. Of course, now you have Tally for all this, but you can also have access to Tally if required. Okay, you have inventory records like stock register, asset register, voucher files. Okay, then there is certain financial things that are in place, like for example requisition forms, travel requisition forms if it's a larger organization. Another important document if you're looking at a project is because those staff are being paid from your project, so look at staff information files. For example, in those staff information, do they have a file, their names, interviews, their attendance, their leave applications, their movement registers, their daily diary, the coordination, their monitoring visit registers, their responsibilities. Okay, and do they have a report, an evaluation reports, and does that report have a particular format? I given a format here. You can look at that format later on. So why am I telling you all this? Because you can have no evaluation without records. Okay, you can have no records without analysis. Okay, no analysis without learning, and there's no learning without action. Of course, there should not be all these things. So it all begins if you're looking at action and change in the project. You're looking at the basically records that are maintained and that record which are analyzed in the project evaluation, monitoring, and then evaluation. So with this, I end my little presentation for you. I am 10 minutes late like last week. Roughly around 7 minutes. I will give you a summary of some of the references that you can go through. These are little videos that will help you to, like say, develop indicators, look at impact assessment, look at the participatory evaluation that I was talking about, better evaluation I was telling you. Look at it. There's some very good videos on this. There's a question answered. Okay, so this is some of the references that I've given you. Okay. So thank you all for your active listening. I'm sorry I couldn't do much of participation in this exercise. Of course, there could have been, but this is the best I can do given the fact I needed to complete so many important points. So do hope to meet you sometime in person, and I will look forward to interacting with you on a personal level also if required, and whenever. Do get in touch with our College of Social Work, Nirmala Niketan. And just to add to you one more important point before I close up and sign off from this project, from this program, I would like to invite you to consider the possibility of taking an MA program in social innovation and entrepreneurship. Okay, so have you heard about this program? Those who are listening in? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now this is a program that is talking about social innovation and entrepreneurship. As you know, entrepreneurship is a growing field, and
So your voice are not audible.
in social entrepreneurship, it will really be good because you can look at concrete initiatives to take livelihood one step further. You yourself could start your own organization, and you can help those beneficiaries within the organization to start their own business initiatives, making an impact in the community. Okay, so just a little bit, you go up to our website, Nirmala Niketan. My laptop has suddenly failed, as in it is suddenly stuck. I hope you are listening to me.
Yes.
Yeah, so please do take some time to look at our website, College of Social Work, Nirmala Niketan, and go up to the recent MA in Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And if you have friends who would be interested to sign up, please tell them to. Yeah. So that's all for now. And
Sir, is it 2 years course? Hello? Sir, you're not audible.
Wednesday, Thursdays, from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock every day, 4 hours of lectures. Okay, Program is starting in August, so please go up to the website, click on the link, and if you are interested, see the details, download the syllabus. The syllabus is also given. So please download the syllabus and check finance course. Every semester is very, I would say, in fact, it is quite economically, what you call it, priced. As in, if you look at the same course which is offered by some of the international, and they are very highly priced, and we as Social Work College Nirmala Niketan is starting off very modestly with 25,000 a semester. That's 4 semesters. The entire course is for 1 lakh. Okay, but I would assure you that it is well planned by Dr. Ronald, who is also your course director, and our entire NCSI team. I'm the coordinator for the team. So I'll be happy to also answer any queries. If ever you have, you can call me up on my phone number, which was given to you. And we can definitely meet offline too and solve your queries if you're interested to take it forward. So thank you all for being part of, I think Sandesh sir is there. Sandesh sir, are you there? Hello.
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Yeah, just officially handing over to you before I leave. Yeah, so I'm sure you will have an evaluation. So please tell me also areas that I need to improve on in terms of my teaching and my course methodology and notes. I will share with you all the presentations that I've had, and of course a lot of other references can be given and shared with you. I've started already sharing. The remaining I will share with you in your group. Okay.
Yes, sir, actually, thank you so much for your guidance. I will request any one of the students if they would like to say something and would like to give the vote of thanks. Yes, anyone would like to say something?
Sorry. I think it's my, it's
No
mine.
problem.
I think it's
Yeah,
my.
yeah, no problem. Students would like to say something?
No, just to thank sir on behalf of everyone.
Any,
Yeah.
yeah.
So thank you so much because we got lots of insight about all the project management the topic which is very important for the course and for our professional development. So it was really nice to to know all this in all the 5 sessions. Your slides were so informative, your information and the way you have actually got us involved in all the process. Really thanks a lot, sir, and it was really
Yeah.
nice to
Yeah.
learn from
Thank
you.
you. Yes.
Great.
Ha- Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Sir, I really like to thank you, and I really this whole module was so much interesting, and because I am into project management, I really gained lots and lots from this particular session, and hopefully I will be able to apply to my current work also, and it will definitely help me to grow professionally. and and really there were a lot of insights, new things I got to learn. I really thank you for that. I would really like to be connected with you in case any
Yes.
future like
Certainly
assist.
you can.
Thank you so much, sir, once again.
Kushala here, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much. As everyone said, it was really useful, and practically we could connect with our daily routine assignments, what you have taught. But as you rightly said in the beginning, it had to be offline.
Yeah.
That would have been more effective, I feel, because the topics which you covered
Yes.
were exactly what we were doing in our day-to-day project life. So having a clear information about all this were very important, because other things probably we could learn from, reading some books or something like that, but this was, I think, beyond any content of books. So the contents were very informative, though we really got jumbled up sometime because all the topics were interconnected with each other. So in the bargain, we are moving from one slide to the other. Sometimes thoda confusion hota tha, but it was really very interesting. And I think at least this module should be offline. That is my recommendation. Thank you so much
Yes, yes. Thank,
for
yeah,
imparting so much of knowledge. Thank you.
yeah. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so
Yes.
much, all the students, for your valuable feedback about the sir. And sir, before ending this session, I